Republic of Korea.
Honorable leaders, citizens of the world who cherish democracy, the Republic of Korea greatly appreciates the opportunity to host the third Summit for Democracy this year, following the co-hosting of the second summit last year. The main theme of this summit is democracy for future generations. Our youth will lead the future, are highly familiar with rapidly advancing new technologies. Technologies like high-speed wireless internet and artificial intelligence are improving our lives and significantly bridging geographical distances. However, at the same time, these new technologies are posing new challenges to our societies and democracy itself. The indiscriminate spread of misinformation using AI can distort public opinion and undermine the trust of our citizens in electoral systems. With the widespread use of the Internet, there are growing concerns over invasion of privacy and human rights violations in the digital space. They pose a grave threat to democracy that we have held dear for so long and to the progress we have made over the past decades. The Korean government is taking measures to ensure that new technologies do not undermine democracy but promote the benefit and welfare of humanity. First, we are strengthening the accountability of online platforms to prevent the indiscriminate spread of disinformation. We are also pushing for mandatory labeling of AI-generated content on the Internet. Second, we are expanding tailored fact-checking education so that future generations can discern disinformation and fake news. Third, we are carefully examining content filtering by online service providers to eradicate the distribution of sexually illicit material in the digital realm. We are also increasing support for victims of these crimes. We will exert our utmost efforts to ensure that such initiatives to safeguard democracy in the 21st century may come to fruition. Korea has been taking the path where we strive to harmonize technological innovation with democratic advancement. We intend to actively share our experiences with the rest of the international community. Lastly, as a nation that has risen from the ruins of war, and as a country that has built a democratic society and prosperous economy, overcoming numerous challenges in just half a century, we will do our part to contribute to promoting democracy in developing countries. To this end, the Korean government plans to pursue a development assistance package worth $100 million over the next 3 years starting this year, in areas such as e-government, digitalization, technology, capacity building, transparency, and anti-corruption. Through this year's Summit for Democracy, Korea will share its experiences of democratic progress with fellow global citizens to realize our vision of a global pivotal state. Thank you.
Albania.
Distinguished hosts and guests, I'm honored to once again address this summit, reaffirming our commitment to the core principles of democracy, the driving force that propels progress. At the inaugural Summit for Democracy, Albania stood on the brink of assuming its non-permanent seat at the UN Security Council. We have fulfilled this responsibility with great success, contributing to multilateral efforts for peace and stability in an ever-challenging global landscape. We have become among the most ardent advocates supporting the Ukrainian people's quest for sovereignty within the UNCC and other political engagements, and this dedication culminated in the successful co-hosting of the Ukraine Southeast Europe Summit alongside President Zelensky. As we collectively navigate these challenges, we stand in firm alignment with our democratic partners, such as the US, the EU, and NATO. The recent establishment of the NATO air base in the Albanian city of Kosovo marks a significant step towards enhancing regional security, once again emphasizing Albania's added value within the strategic alliance. Zooming into our national endeavors, we have diligently implemented an unprecedented justice reform that positions Albania as a regional frontrunner in establishing an entirely independent judiciary. Building on this success and in this pivotal juncture in Albania's transformation process, we aim to embark on a reform journey to further solidify good governance, rule of law, and anti-corruption, with a view to ensure irreversibility of our progress and advance with an accelerated pace towards EU accession. In parallel, through initiatives such as streamlining online public services, piloting AI in legislative alignment, and establishing innovation nuclei within the government, Albania is on the path to becoming a technology and innovation hub in the Western Balkans. We are increasingly investing in developing digital skills and fostering support for young tech entrepreneurs. At the same time, as we work to increase participation in democratic processes, including that of women, we are intensifying our vigilance in countering the threats of disinformation in the digital era. For the formerly most isolated country in Europe to have come this far, with ambitions reaching even further, we take great pride in our achievements. Our journey serves as a reminder that there are no obstacles too great to make us invincible in our progress. The responsibility to safeguard this progress rests upon us, and we are confident that our joint actions with like-minded international partners will lay the groundwork for a more robust democratic future for this and future generations to come. Thank you all.
Armenia.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, distinguished leaders of states, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to address the Summit for Democracy and share the democratic achievements and aspirations of the Republic of Armenia. The agenda of democratic reforms remains a top priority for our government. As a result, according to the reports of the Freedom House, Armenia has been ranked as a free internet country several years in a row. We have registered improvement of Global Freedom Index, advancing our positions by 2 points within 1 year. Armenia has also registered progress in the World Press Freedom Index and improved its positions by 2 points in 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, the fundamental question that arises among democracies nowadays is whether democracy can deliver security and stability. Over the past several years, we have experienced multiple times how democratic institutions can ensure internal stability. On the other hand, Armenia has been attacked by some external undemocratic forces through military and hybrid means that targeted not only the territorial integrity and independence of our country, but democracy as well. And we decided to join the International Criminal Court to protect our independence, territorial integrity, and democracy. Being committed to the peace process with Azerbaijan, Armenia views its security primarily in peaceful coexistence and cooperation with its neighbors in the region and beyond. Hence, the project Crossroads of Peace, introduced by the government of the Republic of Armenia, aims to contribute to the security, stability, and peace in the South Caucasus. This project is another indicator of my government's commitment to contribute to the lasting peace and security in the region by means of cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, I reiterate the commitment of Armenia to the democratic route in the benefit of region in general and in the benefit of the statehood of the Republic of Armenia, its sovereignty and its international role. Thank you.
Australia.
Australia is one of the world's oldest continuous democracies. And for Australians, democracy is at the heart of who we are. It binds us and it guides us. It underscores our belief in justice and the rule of law, in equal opportunity, human rights, a free press, and dignity for all. Democracy gives us the power to show up, take part, and share freely and safely in the contest of ideas. It reminds us that no matter who we are or where we're from, we matter. Every day we see how democracy delivers, how it builds trust between governments and citizens, and how it makes people's lives better in meaningful and lasting ways. Democracy thrives on people's willingness to engage with respect and cooperation. Authoritarianism does the opposite. We see the corrosive forces of division and cynicism that are taking hold in too many parts of the world, fueling disinformation and polarisation online, heightening our vulnerability to foreign interference and draining public trust. As the leaders of democracies, we must continue using our voices to counter these forces, to show that democracies work, to shape and improve our democratic systems so they remain healthy and strong for the future. And Australia is doing just this. We're continuing to support free and fair elections in our region by helping to build the capacity of electoral management bodies in the Indo-Pacific. We're continuing to work with partners at home and abroad to build resilience against foreign interference. And we're advocating for an independent and fearless media sector. We'll continue to do all this and more, including on emerging risks in cyber and artificial intelligence. To believe in democracy is to have faith in the power of people and respect for the responsibility and the capacity of government. Australia champions that faith and strives to earn that respect wherever we can, in order to safeguard this most vital and precious institution for generations to come.
Belgium.
Distinguished audience, this year more voters than ever in history will head to the polls, with elections expected in 54 countries impacting half of the global population. Also in Belgium, national elections will be held. Over the last 3 years, research has shown that democratic governance is in decline. But despite this sobering fact, people's dedication to democratic rules offers a glimmer of hope. My recent visit to Ukraine strengthened my conviction that we should cherish our liberties and democratic governance. Ukraine stands at the border between democracy and dictatorship. And it is the people of Ukraine who stand on the front lines defending that border for all of us. It is between the rule of law and the rule by assassination, the border between respect for human rights and systematic violations of those rights. The resilience of our democracies is being tested by multiple global challenges. Digital technologies and artificial intelligence are being exploited. There is no easy solution to this menace, but we do know the solution lies in maximizing access to reliable information, promoting digital literacy, and offering quality education. The importance of independent journalism and media is even greater in electoral processes. Access to the internet and to reliable and independent information are also crucial in times of conflict. Journalists play a critical role in keeping the world informed. However, UNESCO figures show that last year was particularly deadly for journalists who work in conflict zones. The Committee to Protect Journalists counted 95 journalists among the more than 31,000 people killed since the Gaza war began on October 7th. Therefore, Belgium pledges to join the Media Freedom Coalition. The power of democracy, human rights and dialogue is ultimately far greater than any form of hate, bigotry and exclusion. But democracy is like any marriage. It needs a lot of effort. It is something you need to work on. You can never take it for granted. Thank you.
Belize.
Mr. President, heads of state and heads of government, thank you for taking this initiative on leading the global discourse on democracy. I greet you from the campaign trail where on March 6th, Belizeans will go to the polls in an exercise of our vibrant democracy. Democracy is a multidimensional concept. It is a holistic function of governance based on legitimacy, participation, inclusivity, rights, accountability, and transparency. Democracy matters to Belize. It provides a framework that fosters free and fair elections, stability, social cohesion, and economic development for all. For us, democracy underpins Belize's commitment to promoting and protecting the civil rights and liberties of its people. But democracy is not only a normative framework, it must also deliver a better life for Belizeans. Thus, our democracy is committed to promoting quality education for all, reducing poverty, promoting sustainable development, and demanding climate justice. A close working relationship between government and civil society organizations and the free press are essential to consolidating Belize's democracy for future generations. My government established the People's Constitution Commission to provide recommendations to reform Belize's constitution to ensure that our challenges and aspirations are met. The Commission is in the midst of executing its mandate. It has conducted numerous public consultations countrywide and have received over 2,000 suggestions. Additionally, we have strengthened public procurement framework. We have advanced the implementation of UNCAC, and in January of this year, we adopted an anti-corruption declaration in collaboration with all stakeholders of the Belizean society, including young people who will carry on the torch of democracy. My government is committed to ensuring that our democracy delivers a better life for Belizeans. To that end, we have adopted a number of measures, including eliminating patient fees at Belize's public hospitals, expanding national health insurance across 5 of our 6 districts, incorporating STEAM into the education system, focusing on gender inclusion, and expanding the Education Upliftment Project to provide access to education in vulnerable, at-risk communities. In Belize, we can attest to the benefits of democracy. We urge all states to adhere to the core principles of democracy to ensure stability, peace, and prosperity. I thank you.
Botswana.
Your Excellencies, President Yoon Suk Yeol of the Republic of Korea, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. My sincere gratitude goes to President Yoon Suk Yeol of the Republic of Korea for hosting the 3rd Summit for Democracy. Let me also thank the United States of America, USA, for continuing to advocate for the consolidation of democracy all over the world. Botswana is a beacon of stability, but we continue to solidify our democracy and uphold the values of liberty and dignity for our people and our future generations to come. In this regard, at the 2023 Summit for Democracy, Botswana joined other democracies in adopting the Summit for Democracy Declaration, affirming the shared belief in the enduring values of democracy. To this end, Botswana committed to the following. Pledge number 1, hosting the National Democracy Institute NDI Democracy Summit. In July 2022, Botswana made the National Democracy Institute NDI of the USA co-hosted a 2-day democracy summit in Gaborone, Botswana. The summit theme was constitutionalism and democratic consolidation in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the Gaborone Summit, while advocating for the rights of our people, successfully promoted dialogue on the need for the consolidation of democracy in Africa. We should at all times counter democratic backsliding and the erosion of constitutionalism across the continent. During the Gaborone Summit, there was also consensus on the need to institutionalize presidential term limits as one of the guard rails of democratic leadership. Pledge number 2, development of the African Leadership Center. Consistent with Botswana's commitment to strengthening and consolidating democracy, Botswana has embarked on the process of establishing an African Leadership Center at the University of Botswana. This initiative, in partnership with the University of Virginia's Presidential Precinct, will foster discussions on safeguarding democracy and addressing contemporary challenges, such as those brought about by the wave of disinformation on civic engagement, fueled by the absence of critical media literacies in the use of digital technologies, otherwise called social media. Botswana has a youth cohort of 47.6%, almost half of the population of the country. In this regard, it is imperative that our youth remain engaged on the discourse on democracy. Furthermore, Botswana is committed to promoting the values of democracy and sharing our experiences beyond our shores. As an example, in 2022, I was invited by the University of Pennsylvania to discuss Botswana's successes in furthering democracy and countering democratic backsliding in Africa. Similar outreach discussions on good governance, democracy, and the rule of law were conducted at Virginia Tech in the United States and at the University of Bahamas. Pledge number 3, strengthening support for Democracy Works Foundation Botswana. The Democracy Works Foundation Botswana was launched in October 2021 as a partnership between the USA Embassy and Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, of Botswana. Its aim is training and mentorship support to enhance women participation in politics. While Botswana is performing well in terms of women leadership in sectors such as business and the civil service, the representation of women in politics is lacking. My government continues to encourage women's participation in politics in order to maintain a strong, vibrant, and inclusive democracy. As I conclude, I wish once again to thank the government of the Republic of Korea for this platform and wish you a successful hosting of the summit. I am pleased to inform the summit that Botswana will be holding general elections in October 2024, as constitutionally mandated. We are proud of our legacy of free, fair, and predictable elections, which has become a hallmark of our democracy. I thank you profusely for your attention.
Bulgaria.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the President of the Republic of Korea for the invitation to participate in the 3rd Summit for Democracy. This forum is a valuable tool to facilitate the international exchange of ideas and good practices for democratic development. Therefore, we are deeply thankful to the Republic of Korea for hosting this event. Since the first Summit for Democracy in 2021, the challenges to the international peace and human rights have increased in number and magnitude. In this context, fighting corruption on national level is the main commitment a government can take to safeguard democracy. The national anti-corruption policies represent a crucial guarantee for national security, stability, and sovereignty. Hence, they were the focus of 2 consecutive Bulgarian governments within the framework of the last year of action. In line with the national commitments, in 2023, Bulgaria undertook key legislative amendments to reinforce the independence of its national judiciary and to strengthen the accountability of the Public Prosecution Office. To this end, the Parliament has adopted constitutional amendments and a new anti-corruption law, which are to consolidate the efforts to prevent, detect, investigate, and prosecute corruption crimes. The adoption of these new legal tools, however, represents only the necessary first step. The government and the public administration have yet to secure in practice the successful implementation and the effectiveness of the new legislation. We ought to remain aware that fighting corruption is a long-term priority, and this topic should remain pertinent. Excellencies, safeguarding democracy is impossible unless we convince our societies that it works for them, that this is the one form of government where every human life matters equally and where human dignity represents a true value. Guided by this conviction, Bulgaria has placed the respect, protection, and promotion of democracy, human rights, and fundamental freedoms at the core of its foreign policy. These values will underpin the membership of Bulgaria in the UN Human Rights Council for the next 2 years. In conclusion, I would like to assure you that Bulgaria is looking forward to continuing its cooperation with fellow democracies in order to stand up for our shared values and for promoting democratic principles at home, regionally, and internationally.
Canada.
When we came together for the first Summit for Democracy in December 2021, we took collective action to strengthen and revitalize democracy. In the years since, a lot has changed. A war has broken out in Europe. Rights and freedoms in well-established democracies have been challenged. Coordinated, Kremlin-backed campaigns have amplified mistrust in our elections, and global dissatisfaction in democratic institutions is becoming all too apparent. Mes amis, on ne peut plus tenir la démocratie pour acquise. Plus que jamais, il faut qu'on y porte une attention constante, prudente et collective. Le Canada s'est montré à la hauteur du défi. On est parmi les premiers pays du monde à avoir mis en place un plan pour protéger notre démocratie. Notre plan reconnaît que pour protéger notre démocratie, tout le monde a un rôle à jouer. Les gouvernements, la société civile et les médias. With our new civic toolkits, we're helping Canadians become more informed and more resilient to disinformation. And while there is no simple formula for building trust, we know that democracy must deliver on the issues people care about. Il faut s'attaquer à des enjeux comme les changements climatiques et améliorer les services pour les citoyens. On doit travailler avec les gouvernements provinciaux et territoriaux pour aborder des priorités communes. On l'a fait pour renforcer les systèmes de soins de santé à travers le Canada, pour mettre en place un système pan-canadien d'apprentissage et de garde des jeunes enfants, et plus encore. Et c'est ça, la démocratie à l'œuvre. Internationally, alongside our Dutch friends, we're spearheading initiatives to define and defend information integrity. We're protecting citizens who travel, live, and work abroad from arbitrary detention by states who seek to use them as bargaining chips in international relations. We're taking action to manage the challenges of AI, which holds great potential to reshape our world for the better. We're responding rapidly to hostile state activity together with our G7 partners, and we're helping countries around the globe make their democratic institutions more resilient. L'année dernière, on a présidé la communauté des démocraties. Et dans les mois et les années à venir, on va poursuivre notre travail dans d'autres rôles. Mais prenons un pas de recul pour reconnaître à quel point le moment qu'on traverse est lourd de conséquences. There's no better time to talk about democracy than right now. At least 88 countries will have an election this year. More than 4 billion people will head to the polls to exercise the power of their vote. And the integrity of these elections will undoubtedly be challenged from abroad and from within by extremist movements that exploit our fears and our anger, by despots who defy the rule of law and use violence to dispose of democratic opposition, and by foreign actors who seek out opportunities to sow discord and spread disinformation. Bien entendu, dans les années qui ont passé depuis notre premier sommet, le paysage numérique a beaucoup changé. Ces changements ont eu une incidence dans les démocraties du monde. Mass-produced manipulated media blurs the line between fact and fiction. Echo chambers radicalize our most impressionable neighbors. And artificial intelligence, when in the hands of bad actors, had left many of us questioning the truth of what we see and hear. All of this is happening at an unparalleled speed, scale, and sophistication. And we need to be asking ourselves and each other if we're ready. Après tout, même le Canada, un pays où nos institutions démocratiques sont solides, où nos médias sont indépendants et où l'on respecte la primauté du droit, un pays où on a travaillé fort pour protéger et préserver notre démocratie contre toutes les formes de menaces, même le Canada n'est pas à l'abri de ce genre de problème. As leaders and elected officials, it's up to us to protect our democracies for future generations. Because when we give our citizens the tools to withstand the political polarization that turns neighbor against neighbor, when we bring diverse voices to the table rather than reject the input of those who don't think like us, look like us, or worship like us, when we protect the human rights defenders, the activists, and the journalists who fearlessly defend the values we hold dear, democracy is at its best. Voilà pourquoi les sommets comme celui-ci tombent au bon moment. Ils nous rassemblent pour nous permettre de reconnaître les obstacles et de nous engager à les surmonter. My friends, we can't assume that democracy will always prevail or that it comes without a cost. Just look to Ukraine. Their defenders are constantly reminding us that the idea of democracy and the concept of choosing your own future is both important enough to die for and strong enough to win. I know you know this. Our democracies didn't happen by accident, and they won't continue without effort. Well, know this as well. Canada will continue to work with all countries, from our long-standing partners to our newest friends, to show the world that democracy is enduring and resilient. Thank you all. Merci beaucoup.
Côte d'Ivoire.
Monsieur le Président Yoon Suk-yeol, Président de la République de Corée et hôte du sommet, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Mesdames et Messieurs, la Côte d'Ivoire se réjouit de participer au 3e sommet pour la démocratie organisé par la République de Corée, une nation amie et un partenaire important de la Côte d'Ivoire. Le thème de ce sommet, à savoir la démocratie pour les générations futures, est d'actualité et d'une grande pertinence au regard de l'état du monde qui laisse apparaître de grandes menaces sur la démocratie. Ce sommet reflète notre volonté commune, mais surtout l'urgence de préserver et de promouvoir les valeurs et les principes qui forment la démocratie dans un contexte de bouleversement géopolitique et technologique. En effet, dans bien des démocraties établies au nord comme au sud, la paix, la stabilité des institutions étatiques ainsi que la cohésion sociale sont de plus en plus fragilisées par la désinformation et la manipulation sur les réseaux sociaux, qui sont d'ailleurs perçus dans plusieurs pays démocratiques comme une menace majeure. De plus, la persistance des conflits et du terrorisme, les graves atteintes au droit international, y compris le droit international humanitaire, tout comme le réchauffement climatique, la pauvreté, le ralentissement économique mondial et surtout la baisse notable de la solidarité entre les nations tendent à remettre en cause les acquis démocratiques de ces dernières années. Il crée surtout un environnement favorable aux courants et aux opinions extrêmes qui affaiblissent la démocratie. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, nous devons repenser les bases de la démocratie afin qu'elles s'adaptent aux exigences de notre époque pour que la jeunesse et les générations futures vivent dans des pays de liberté et dans un monde en paix. Nos actions doivent donc permettre de répondre aux aspirations d'une jeunesse décomplexée et exigeante. Nous devons créer les conditions d'une large implication des populations, notamment les jeunes et les femmes, dans les choix et les décisions de nos États et ancrer ainsi l'idéal démocratique dans la société pour les générations futures. Ces générations futures doivent cependant avoir des raisons de croire en la démocratie avec les obligations, les exigences, mais aussi les droits et les avantages dans un monde de plus en plus influencé par les réseaux sociaux et l'intelligence artificielle qui peuvent, dans des pays où le niveau d'éducation est faible, constituer des risques. Par ailleurs, les générations futures ne se reconnaîtront dans le modèle démocratique actuel que si la gouvernance mondiale est équitable. Ceci implique en particulier une réforme des Nations Unies avec un Conseil de sécurité plus inclusif. Monsieur le Président, c'est à ces conditions que la démocratie pourra demeurer un système fort et sain au service des générations futures.
Croatia.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, we have gathered for this third summit for democracy in the year that could profoundly impact the world. A cycle of elections showcasing all types of systems are to take place worldwide in what can be considered as one of the biggest exercises of political participation in history. Elections in 2024 will be key to assessing the state of democracy today. Many of these elections will not be free and fair processes. So this year we should give special attention to the results of elections in consolidated democracies. This is where the quality of institutions and the trust of citizens in the state are also being challenged by populists and disinformation. In order to safeguard democracy, we need to shift our focus directly to voters' most urgent concerns and address their most pressing issues. The European elections are the second largest in the world this year and will set the tone for European policies in the years to come. In order to respond to climate, energy and technological challenges, the EU's priority is to go in the direction of a double green and digital transition, the only one capable of ensuring long-term competitiveness and a better quality of life for citizens. In Croatia, my country, this year is what we also call a super election year. Alongside the European elections, we will hold both parliamentary and presidential elections, followed early next year by regional and municipal elections. As the Croatian government, we have stood by our own citizens in dealing with negative consequences of the Russian aggression and invasion of Ukraine. Faced with the threat that the energy crisis posed to households' purchasing power, our clear objective was to prevent social divide, ensure social cohesion, and protect democracy. We have continued to support our citizens in alleviating the negative consequences of the Russian aggression, especially in regards to energy prices, but also by combating negative economic trends and high inflation worldwide. By leading a responsible policy, we have made it possible for Croatia to get through multitude of crises without a wave of bankruptcies or layoffs. On the contrary, we have achieved unprecedented economic results. While lowering taxes and reducing deficits and public debt, we increased average wages and pensions by 60%. We doubled the minimum wage and halved unemployment to 6%, while creating 200,000 jobs, which led to a record number of jobs in Croatia. This was our track record for the past 8 years of my Prime Minister's mandate. Thanks to this, our credit rating was improved by 4 notches. At the same time, we achieved the goal of deeper integration into the European Union by joining the Schengen area, the Eurozone, and the European Stabilization Mechanism. Our success in economic and social policies are not means for themselves. They are a guarantee of the enduring trust of our citizens in democracy, a democracy that in turn delivers for its citizens. Dear friends, in the circumstances of numerous security and authoritarian challenges, it is ever more important to strengthen global cooperation in the protection of democratic values. This third summit for democracy is a clear testament of our joint resolve to keep preserving and strengthening democracy for future generations. As a young democracy, which not so long ago had to fight for its freedom and its sovereign right to be master of its destiny, Croatia fully understands the importance of defending democratic values and will continue to be alongside the Ukrainian people in their just struggle against oppression and for freedom. Thank you.
Cyprus.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to participate at the third Summit for Democracy. At the outset, allow me to extend my great appreciation to the government of the Republic of Korea for hosting this auspicious event. The third Summit for Democracy takes place at a timely and critical juncture for both regional and global developments. I firmly believe that this high-level summit serves as an indispensable platform to renew our multilateral cooperation, considering the numerous crises we are all confronted with. It also provides the opportunity to refresh our collective commitment towards the protection of human rights, to rebuild our dedication to the noble values of democracy, and to join efforts in tackling multifaceted global challenges. It is broadly accepted that we are living in extremely challenging times. Terrorism and conflicts exacerbate pain and devastation. Emerging technologies provoke ethical dilemmas. Devastating natural disasters test our resilience and undermine our capacity to be fully responsive to the peoples we serve. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our government's primary goal is to eliminate any form of discrimination and exclusion, promoting a world of equal treatment for all. Since last year's summit, the Republic of Cyprus has taken several measures to further strengthen our democracy by placing greater emphasis on human-centered approach across state policies. In the pursuit of dismantling any form of gender discrimination, all ministers, deputy ministers, and commissioners have signed the Declaration for Zero Tolerance approach on any incident related to sexist behavior and sexual harassment in the workplace. Combating all sorts of exclusion is also a key element in our policy objectives. We have been vigorous over the last year to safeguard equitable access to quality education and healthcare services, regardless of nationality or legal status. We are also training educators and career counselors to deconstruct stereotypes across the society. Turning to this year's pledges, I wish to highlight that participation to the democratic processes is the absolute foundation of robust and vivid democracies. Precisely for this reason, my government will proceed through dialogue, of course, with all competent authorities to set the minimum voting age at 17. At the same time, we are opening channels of a two-way communication with our citizens through the operation of a special digital tool for non-binding referenda. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, The Republic of Cyprus continues to champion for democracy, as we believe that it constitutes the best and well-tested formula for ensuring that all social groups are treated with dignity and respect. We are all obliged to act decisively and collectively so as to preserve the gift of democracy for future generations. Thank you very much.
Czechia.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Republic of Korea for convening the Third Summit for Democracy. It is an embodiment of our joint efforts to strengthen democracy, cooperation, and support of human rights. Let me begin by recalling the consequences of Russia's unprecedented military aggression against Ukraine. In simple terms, it represents a direct attack on our freedoms and democratic values. That is why Czechia continues to provide maximum possible support to Ukraine, and that is why we encourage others to continue or even increase theirs. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, we have witnessed serious increase in hybrid and information operations in Europe and around the world. It is clear that the war is not being only fought in the physical world. Much of it is being fought in people's minds through the growing number of disinformation campaigns and the misuse of digital technologies. I therefore welcome the focus of this year's summit being put on youth and digital technologies. Both are interlinked and both play a crucial role in determining what democracy for future generations will actually look like. Digital technologies can and should increase public participation and, in this respect, contribute to strengthening democratic resilience. Digital technologies are also a powerful tool in the fight for democracy and human rights, as they enable citizens to organize, mobilize, and hold oppressive regimes accountable. Young people in particular have proved to be very skillful and innovative in using these advantages. Having met many dedicated young people during my duties as president, I am confident that their active participation in public affairs will contribute significantly to greater resilience of our societies. Several important elections will take place this year, and I genuinely hope that young people will play an active role. Raising a generation that is interested in current affairs, thinks critically, and is resistant to authoritarian tendencies can be part of the answer to our complex world. Nevertheless, digital technologies can also be used to spread disinformation and propaganda. In recent years, we have witnessed serious increase in hybrid warfare, not only in Europe, but also around the world. Its aim is to undermine our values, weaken trust in democratic institutions, and the way of life in our societies. Therefore, we need to hold substantive debates on how to preserve our freedom of speech and our open society. Given the growing influence of technology in our perception of reality, this is a task for everyone, not only elected governments, but also media, private companies, academia, and citizens, including young people. Czechia is truly committed to protecting fundamental rights and freedoms, both in offline and online worlds. Last year, we initiated, together with partners from Mexico, the Maldives, and Netherlands and South Africa, and submitted a first-ever resolution on the promotion and protection of human rights in the context of digital technologies. In December, the resolution was adopted by the UN General Assembly by consensus. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy is not a matter of course. Its preservation requires our constant effort and responsibility. Our fundamental rights and freedoms have always been the cornerstone of our prosperity and security, regardless of the distance or continents we are coming from. Geographical diversity of participants of this summit is a clear proof that democracy knows no borders. Thank you for allowing me to participate at today's summit and thank you for your attention. Let me wish you fruitful and thought-provoking discussions.
Denmark.
Thank you, President Yoon, for hosting this third Summit for Democracy. This year, over 2 billion people will have the opportunity to vote more than ever before. It's a cause for celebration that so many people will have the possibility to exercise one of the most important democratic acts, to go and vote. But democracy is not only the act of voting in itself. It is, and it has to be, an ongoing conversation. It is in the relation between people that democracy lives. Today, much of this conversation takes place online. On the one hand, this offers huge opportunities. On the other hand, serious risks. Algorithms and disinformation create a picture that is not real and not balanced. A picture that moves us further away from each other, ruins the fundamental belief that we are, despite different opinions, all working towards a better future. We need to be able to trust the news more than ever. Free of censorship and free from suppression, but also free from algorithms that gives a distorted picture and free from disinformation that gives a wrong picture. At the heart of democracy is the democratic conversation. It needs to be informed and it needs to be free. That is why we have a clear vision. We want to make tech work for democracy, not against it. With civil society, the tech industry and governments together in the G20 and the United Nations. An important step is an ambitious global digital compact that promotes democratic values. Last year, Denmark, together with the European Union and Norway, committed 52 million euro for a new idea, the digital democracy. We want to equip democratic actors, civil society and grassroots activists with the digital tool to amplify their voices. Our world of today is facing massive challenges. Division are on the rise. This summit shows that we can stand together, that we act on the values that we hold dear. We need to do this so that democracy always will win. Thank you.
Ecuador.
Since the first Summit of Democracy in 2022, the world has experienced a series of events that have created great challenges for our society. The COVID-19 pandemic required urgent state and government intervention to find solutions for the benefit of the inhabitants of the planet, especially the most vulnerable populations. During the second summit, Ecuador renewed its commitment to fight against corruption, a problem the government is decisively attacking in response to the trust that the people have placed in our political project. In this third summit for democracy, I must refer to the battle we have undertaken against terrorists and transnational organized crime, which have attempted to tear down the foundations of our society. We have declared a direct fight against criminal organizations that operate in Ecuador and their criminal activities extending to all regions of the world. But we have to understand that the cause of this violence are also shared throughout the region. Therefore, our response must be shared, coordinated, and effective. We must be vigilant in the face of this fight, because what is threatened here is the right of future generations to enjoy a solid democracy that can resolve the problems of our citizens. As with economic crisis, the pandemic and climate change, it is essential to join efforts to find effective solutions that ensure a more equitable world that is prepared for regional and global challenges. Only united, we will make democracy prevail. We must foster the ties and cooperation that allow us to invest in social development, employment opportunities, economic recovery, and the fight against poverty. I decided some years ago to participate in politics, hoping to involve young people and provide them with democracy values, and promote their active participation in the public life. to strengthen together the institution in order to build a new Ecuador. I wish to congratulate the government of Korea for hosting the third Summit for Democracy. It is an ally and a strategic partner of Ecuador with whom we have common interest with expectations on the commercial and cooperation level. I reaffirm Ecuador's position in firmly condemning the violations of the obligations set forth in the Security Council, including the launch of ballistic missiles and the development of new programs that endanger peace and stability in the region. I hope that this summit will generate important ideas on democracy, on democratic values, and the new and renewed environment that will promote democracy as a universal and humanistic value. Thank you so much.
Estonia.
Distinguished audience, in a world of turmoil and rapid changes, one principle stands as a beacon of hope for humanity: democracy. Democracy is not just a political system, but an expression of human rights and dignity. Democratic governance requires a constant commitment and support. Digital technology can be one powerful tool for strengthening our governance. It offers unprecedented opportunities to engage with our citizens and increase civic engagement. At the second Summit for Democracy, Estonia co-led the Technology for Democracy cohort with the UK and civil society organization Access Now. Estonia supports those who help to ensure technology is used for advancing democracy. Internet freedom is an important part of this. This is why Estonia continues its work within the Freedom Online Coalition. We are proud to be chairing this coalition next year and bring light to the anti-democratic methods of internet shutdowns. Additionally, for the development of open and secure digital governance, Estonia co-chaired the Open Government Partnership in 2023 and held Global Summit of the Open Government Partnership in Tallinn. We welcomed more than 2,000 participants, government representatives, private sector, and civil society. They all shared the stage as equal partners. Another crucial principle of democracy is media freedom. As the co-chair of the Media Freedom Coalition, we help to end impunity for crimes against journalists. We will also continue our financial support to those fighting for media freedom via UNESCO Global Media, Defense Fund, and the International Fund for Public Interest Media. We also support the organizations that help journalists and human rights defenders in danger, like the Lifeline Assistance Fund. Democracy is not just a political system, it's a way of life. Estonia remains committed to the world founded on freedom, rule of law, and human rights. Thank you.
Fiji.
Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, Nisam Bulobinaka and Anyong Ha Sayo from Fiji. At the outset, I extend my appreciation to President Yoon Suk Yeol for the invitation to attend the third virtual summit for democracy in Seoul, Korea. I address you today on behalf of the people of a new Fiji, a Fiji in which the People's Coalition government leads a democracy that is free, where human rights, in particular freedom of expression and media freedom, have been restored. Your Excellencies, today is an opportune moment to strengthen our democracies and advance respect for human rights. The summit theme, Democracy for Future Generations, serves as a poignant reminder that safeguarding democracy for future generations requires us not only to vote, but to participate in the governance of our nations. Fiji has a young population, with more than 60% below the age of 40 years. We are committed to empowering the children and the youth of Fiji with a holistic approach to their development, so that they can fulfill their full potential. We also emphasize the participation of citizens in governance, in protection of human rights, accountability, free elections every 4 years, respectful rule of law, separation of powers, and equitable representation. Platforms such as this Summit for Democracy are pivotal in building a broader community of partners committed to global democratic renewal. Your Excellencies, as a small island state on the global stage, Fiji has made a deliberate effort to contribute to strengthen the protection of human rights, including in our own membership of the United Nations Human Rights Council. The government I lead is committed to rebuilding regional unity and forging stronger and sustained partnerships with our brothers and sisters in the Pacific and around the globe. We are committed to peace. I congratulate the Republic of Korea for convening this third Summit for Democracy, and I reaffirm Fiji's commitment to a robust and steady democracy in line with the principles of good governance. Vinao Walevu, and thank you very much.
Georgia.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed leaders of democratic nations, as the Prime Minister of Georgia, it's with great pride that I address you today at the Summit of Democracy. This gathering serves as a beacon of hope and solidarity for nations committed to upholding democratic values and fostering cooperation on a global scale. Georgia's democratic journey has been one of perseverance and resilience. We have faced challenges, but through unwavering determination, we have made significant steps in advancing democratic principles. Georgia has been granted the EU candidate status, the milestone which is a testament to our unwavering dedication to democratic values and the rule of law. Georgia is devoted to fulfilling the necessary reforms required for EU membership, recognizing that it will further strengthen democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. We believe that our future lies within the embrace of transparent and accountable institutions, guided by the shared values of freedom, equality, and justice. Hence, today I reaffirm Georgia's unwavering commitment to democracy, European integration, and global cooperation. In line with our commitment to citizen-centric governance, Georgia is taking concrete steps to enhance open government reform in close cooperation with civil society organizations and the wider public. We recognize that transparency, accountability, and citizen participation are essential pillars of a thriving democracy. We remain steadfast in our efforts to ensure that a fair and independent judiciary upholds the principle of administering justice impartially, thereby safeguarding the rights and liberties of all citizens. Furthermore, we are dedicated to enhancing digital tools to promote greater participation and access to public services. From e-governance platforms to online service delivery, we are leveraging technology to make public administration more responsive and accessible to the needs of our citizens. As Georgia prepares to introduce electronic elections for the first time this year, special consideration is being given to ensuring their credibility and security. We recognize the importance of trustworthy electoral processes in upholding the integrity of our democracy. Therefore, the Georgian government is taking meticulous measures to ensure that these elections are conducted with utmost transparency, fairness, and security so that every citizen's voice is heard and respected. In conclusion, let me highlight that democracy is not merely a set of political institutions, but a way of life deeply rooted in our cultural heritage and traditions. Therefore, Georgia stands ready to work hand in hand with fellow democratic nations to confront the challenges of the 21st century and advance our shared values and interests, knowing that by standing united, we can build a better, more democratic future for all. Thank you.
Honduras.
Presidente de la República de Corea, Yoon Suk-yeol, presidentes y primeros ministros. En mi condición de presidenta de la República de Honduras y presidenta pro tempore del Sistema de Integración Centroamericano y de la Comunidad de Estados Latinoamericanos y del Caribe, represento la resistencia, la diversidad cultural, étnica y geográfica de los pueblos de nuestra América. En la cumbre recién pasada, hemos renovado los ideales de Bolívar, Martí y Morazán para la integración regional y el fortalecimiento de nuestras democracias. Justicia social, la lucha contra el hambre, la pobreza y la promoción del desarrollo. Los presidentes y primeros ministros de Latinoamérica y el Caribe, al unísono, hemos hecho un llamado por la paz, usando el diálogo como herramienta y siempre pensando en el bienestar regional y la autodeterminación de los pueblos. Por tanto, estamos obligados a volver la mirada al hermano pueblo de Haití y su población desgarrada por la violencia, la crisis económica y política. La solidaridad internacional y el acompañamiento no debe ser con una intervención militar. Promovemos el diálogo haitiano, no colonial. La democracia está amenazada por un sistema económico excluyente, por el terrorismo, el cual condenamos en todas sus formas, igual que los bloqueos y la guerra. Los bombardeos de Israel contra niños, niñas, mujeres y ancianos palestinos en la Franja de Gaza han sido condenados en la Asamblea de las Naciones Unidas y con grandes protestas en las calles de diferentes países del mundo. Es urgente el reconocimiento al Estado palestino, un inmediato alto al fuego y establecer los corredores humanitarios que brinden alimentos, medicinas, esperanza y salven la vida de miles de seres inocentes. En Honduras, nuestra democracia ha sido golpeada por la crisis mundial, el capitalismo, guerras, inflación, calentamiento global y sobre todo por las corruptas privatizaciones neoliberales. En Honduras luchamos 12 años y 7 meses contra un régimen corrupto de narcotraficantes que secuestró el Estado después del golpe a la democracia del 28 de junio del 2009. Nuestra convicción democrática surge de la resistencia del pueblo, de esa lucha por la democracia, que es la lucha por la soberanía y el bienestar de la población. Construyamos entonces verdaderas democracias, pero sobre todo dotémoslas de un contenido humano. Desde Latinoamérica hago un llamado a la unidad, a la memoria, la justicia y por la paz. Muchas gracias.
Iceland.
Dear colleagues, democracy is under pressure in the world today. We continue to face multiple and overlapping challenges, with more wars and conflicts around the world since the end of the Second World War, and the deepening climate, food and energy crisis pose threats to people, global peace and security. In the face of such dire circumstances, it is easy to lose hope that humanity can come together to ensure peace and a dignified existence for all. For many, words seem futile and tangible results from international cooperation seem way too slow. Yet, in our pursuit of progress, we must place faith in the power of collaboration to achieve meaningful change for the betterment of the many. Dear friends, the freedom to choose, speak, think and love can never be taken for granted, and the same applies to people's rights to exercise influence, vote and be treated equally under the law. Democracy delivers economic and social gains as well as peace and stability. It enables voices to be heard and allows for conflicts in society to be solved through the peaceful means. We all know that tireless work lies behind every advancement in human rights, and a part of our democratic duty is to remain constantly vigilant to defend the gains that have been made. Women's rights have come under pressure recently with a serious backlash happening around the world. Gender equality has a profound positive effect on society and economy. Societies where women have the same opportunities as men are more socially just, more prosperous, and more peaceful. A critical part of strengthening democracy is to achieve and then defend gender equality. There can be no real democracy if half of the population is left out. Dear colleagues, Iceland will continue to do all it can to be a strong voice for democracy and human rights both at home and in international cooperation. This was a priority focus of our recent presidency in the Council of Europe that concluded with a summit in Reykjavik. There, an important step was taken towards ensuring accountability for damage, loss, or injury resulting from the Russian aggression with the establishment of the Register of Damages. The advancement of universal human rights and fundamental freedoms is also a top priority of Iceland's candidature to the Human Rights Council for the term 2025 to 2027. Dear colleagues, optimism is sometimes defined as faith in society and other people, believing that it is possible to do something good and have a positive impact on the world. That belief is necessary. Thank you.
Iraq.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you on behalf of Iraq and its people, who convey all messages of harmony, stability, and constructive partnership to brotherly and friendly nations, and express the willingness to cooperate for sustainable development that addresses the challenges of our time in all aspects. In today's world, stability is paramount, and development relies on consolidating peace. Conflicts pose the primary threat to development, and justice within the international system serves as the foremost safeguard against the escalation of any conflict. That has been our stance, and it is still regarding the conflict in Gaza and the atrocities unfolding there, which reflect a level of brutality unparalleled since World War II. There is no justification for what's happening to the Palestinians. Ladies and gentlemen, today's challenges are not confined to specific geographical boundaries. They are comprehensive and far-reaching. A prime example is the impact of climate change, which our region, and Iraq in particular, grapples with. Hence, it's imperative to uphold stability by honoring the rights of peoples to access shared water resources and rivers. To address this challenge, our government has taken significant measures, notably investing in associated gas and renewable energy to safeguard the environment and prevent further deterioration. Our government has fulfilled its constitutional duty by holding provincial elections and providing a secure environment that ensures the right to fair electoral competition. This aligns with the administrative system's transformation requirement and delegates more administrative powers to the governorates in accordance with the Constitution. Our government also conducted elections in the diverse Kirkuk governorate, the first since 2005. The government has managed diversity effectively, ensuring all community components their right to political and administrative representation. After the past 2 decades, our government has demonstrated its effective vision by prioritizing service needs, the fight against corruption, and economic reform. It laid solid foundations for the social protection programs, individual and family care, and set the wheels of work in motion to address unemployment and poverty. In today's Iraq, development is based on partnership, as we have embarked on a series of strategic projects aimed at advancing regional development and fostering prosperity within our nation. These include the ambitious Al-Fao Grand Port project, a mega development road project, various other significant infrastructure and service projects, and service interrogation projects. These projects are geared towards enhancing the welfare of our citizens and will generate promising opportunities, particularly for our youth. The government has initiated a series of programs aimed at harnessing the energy of our youth to accomplish tangible development objectives. We hope that this summit achieves meaningful outcomes that take into consideration collaborative efforts to promote democracy and foster a conducive environment for democratic institutions to thrive and prosper. Peace upon you all.
Ireland.
2024 will put democracies across the globe to the test. More than 4 billion people will be eligible to vote at some point over the year in over 60 countries and regions around the world, exercising their democratic right to elect their government and choose who represents them. We must never take that right for granted. This year's summit could not be more timely. My thanks to President Yoon Suk-yeol and the government of the Republic of Korea for organising such a relevant and interesting summit. The theme, Democracy for Future Generations, is really fitting. We must be steadfast custodians of our institutions and freedoms for those that come after us. No democracy is perfect, but it is by far the best form of governance we have, and we must protect it. Freedom is not free. There are many in this world who would threaten and undermine the basic principles of democracy: government for, by, and of the people, for their own nefarious ends. We must be united and fearless in our opposition to those forces. I'm thinking specifically of the war we are seeing today on the continent of Europe with Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, a democratic country. Ukraine is standing for all of our values in fighting against Russia, and we must stand with them in that fight. Unfortunately, state actors are not the only powers at play when it comes to potential threats to our democracy. The world of technology is changing, and we must make sure we protect our institutions from those that wish to use new tools for their own iniquitous means. I know you're discussing artificial intelligence over the course of the summit. I believe this technology has the potential to be an incredible force for good in the world, but we of course must look at guarding against its malicious uses, specifically in relation to the spread of misinformation and disinformation and the potential for interference in free and fair democratic elections. This will require all of us to work together. The EU is playing its part. The recently agreed AI Act puts in place the right safeguards for trustworthy AI, which will protect our health, our environment, and our democratic processes, among many other priorities. This approach also harnesses AI opportunities for our common good. In Ireland, we'll continue to nourish and protect our democracy. We strive to be a place where all our people have the opportunity to know and fully access all their rights, with democratic participation being a priority. We'll continue to use the Citizens' Assembly model to reach consensus on contentious societal issues. And we'll continue to support a free and independent media that is robust in its scrutiny of politicians and all of those in positions of power. It is something we never take for granted and are always working on. So I wish you all a successful summit and commend you for the vital work you're doing to safeguard our hard-won democratic freedoms for future generations. Thank you very much.
Israel.
Mr. President, thank you for hosting this important conference. I well remember our important meeting at the UN and the cooperation that our two democracies set to establish and enhance, because this is part of our common battle for the future of civilization. Democracy is an integral part of civilization, and that civilization right now is under threat in the Middle East and elsewhere. In the Middle East, we have the force of barbarians who want to take the Middle East, the world, back to the Dark Ages. They're mass killers, have murdered families, children in front of their parents, parents in front of their children. We've seen them rape and behead women, burn babies, take little children as hostages. This is barbarism of the first order. We cannot let this savagery spread throughout the world. So Israel is engaged in a war not only against those who sought to eradicate it, but also those who seek to eradicate the values that make life worthwhile and make our civilization possible. I know that everyone in the world wants to see the victory of moderation and progress over barbarism and darkness. That is a battle we are absolutely committed to win. But in so doing, we're not only protecting our future, but we're opening the possibilities, vast possibilities, of progress and peace in the Middle East. We will de-radicalize and demilitarize Gaza. We will expand the Abraham Accords. We will open new trade routes and sea routes that will make world trade possible. We will open up the future of our common civilization. Mr. President, thank you for being such an important part of that future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Japan.
On the occasion of the Third Summit for Democracy, I would like to reiterate Japan's unwavering commitment to democracy. Japan has been steadily implementing its previous commitments from the standpoint of emphasizing universal values, including democracy. First, toward a more transparent government, Japan has been steadily implementing highly transparent official development assistance and support for the establishment of laws and regulations, as well as judicial institutions and human resource development overseas. Second, toward stronger democracy, Japan has provided capacity-building assistance and equipment for democratic elections overseas. For example, we recently dispatched election observer missions to Bangladesh and Pakistan for their general elections. We also invited Cambodian youths involved in politics from the ruling and opposition parties to Japan. Third, in the area of business and human rights, we have formulated cross-industry guidelines for businesses, decided on a government policy on human rights considerations in public procurement, and are promoting efforts to respect human rights in the supply chains of Japanese companies, including those overseas. We will also lead global efforts to achieve the empowerment of women and girls and work on further gender mainstreaming. Although the consolidation of democracy cannot be achieved overnight, we believe that such efforts will lay the foundation for a peaceful, stable, and prosperous society in which human dignity is protected. Today's democracy is particularly indispensable for protecting the future of children and young people who will lead the next generation. Aiming to realize a children-centered society, Japan recognizes children and youth as subjects of rights, guarantees their rights, and is committed to promoting their best interests now and in the future, while respecting their viewpoints, listening to their opinions, and engaging with them in dialogue. We will also make every effort to support children in vulnerable situations around the world, so that no child is left behind, and children can grow up healthy, go to school, and enjoy their rights.
Kenya.
Your Excellency, Yoon Suk-yeol, President of the Republic of Korea, Your Excellency Mette Frederiksen, Prime Minister of Denmark, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, leaders of delegations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to commend His Excellency President Yoon Suk-yeol for convening this third summit for democracy to champion democratic ideals, values, and principles for future generations. This is crucial, especially at this time, which presents opportunities and challenges as our countries strive to maintain the practice of democracy. Kenya's participation as a co-host in this summit demonstrates our shared commitment to a peaceful, collegial, and participatory society. This includes effective state institutions and vibrant civil society operating in a coordinated manner for the benefit of our citizens. While the economies of the Global South are now recovering from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the task of creating viable economic opportunities for participatory governance by young people is still a challenge. This has had the negative consequences of increased intra-state conflicts, recruitment to terrorism activities, and illegal migration, among other transnational crimes. My administration's bottom-up economic transformation agenda is effectively working to ensure sustainable reforms in public institutions in Kenya to further enhance inclusivity and transparency. This will be realized by refocusing limited resources towards critical high productivity value chains and social sectors for the benefit of all Kenyans. Kenya has made significant strides towards the creation of an inclusive society and participatory governance structure, courtesy of the 2010 Constitution of Kenya. This governance structure, which Kenyans bestowed on themselves 14 years ago, has now midwifed 3 general elections, including a repeat presidential election, which was necessitated by the decision of a Supreme Court, Kenya's highest court, in 2017. These formidable and independent institutions of participatory governance have also adopted the use of technology, resulting in increased efficiency and transparency, and are now serving as models of best practice in our continent. These enviable democratic credentials in Kenya has been made possible due to the partnership and collaboration with various stakeholders in Africa and globally. We would like to assure our partners that the government and people of Kenya are deeply committed to the cause of democracy and will neither falter nor betray this noble endeavor. As world leaders and other partners gather in Seoul to discuss democracy for the future generations, we assure you that you have a partner and a friend in Kenya. My country represents the aspirations of many Africans in a functioning democracy. Thank you all. I wish you fruitful deliberations.
Kosovo.
Esteemed colleagues, dear representatives of the institutions of South Korea, democracy can't be taken for granted. Democracy isn't a given. It is a responsibility to protect, to uplift, to defend, to support, but most importantly, a responsibility to act. 3 years ago, through the initiative of President Biden, we joined the democratic world in conveying a message of unity, but most importantly, a message about the necessity of democracy sticking together in the face of rising autocracies. Ever since, the commitments we made within the framework of the Summit for Democracy have guided our path in policy and decision-making alike. In every era, democracy has been tested by the forces of tyranny and oppression, and by those who seek to undermine its transformative power. Yet, it endures. It becomes more resilient and robust, because at its core, democracy is about the spirit of the people. It's about their dreams, their aspirations. Since we last met, Kosovo has made significant strides in advancing the rule of law in line with the adopted comprehensive national strategy, one of the most significant deliverables as part of our S4D commitments. We have also demonstrated our commitment to international standards and cooperation by joining the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention in State-to-State Relations, by signing the Declaration of Principles to combat transnational repression alongside 6 other democratic countries last October, and by working closely with the United States towards advancing joint efforts to countering foreign state information manipulation. With gender equality and women empowerment standing at the core of all of our commitments, we have worked across all institutions and with civil society to combat gender-based violence, to empower women economically, and to strengthen their role in public and political institutions. As I speak, we are preparing to host the second edition of the International Forum on Women, Peace and Security in Pristina this April. In this edition, not only will we focus on partnerships and dialogue to advance sustainable peace through securing higher women representation at all levels of decision-making, but we are also proud to announce the establishment of the first regional center of excellence on women, peace and security in the Western Balkans, in partnership with the Office of the U.S. Secretary of State and in line with the U.S. 2023 WPS and National Action Plan. These measures collectively represent a robust approach to reinforcing the rule of law, showcasing Kosovo's dedication to legal reform, transparency, and the protection and advancement of human rights. In this journey, engaging the next generation in democratic processes is existential. I am convinced that through their ever-evolving digital fluency, we have exceptional opportunities to innovate democracy. The actions of our youth, their passion, and the commitment to democracy can inspire a new era of progress and prosperity. Because where there is consistency, persistence, unity, and ambition, democracy always wins. Thank you.
Latvia.
Dear friends, democracy is the foundation of freedom and peace. It is a core value, opportunity, and responsibility. We must never take it for granted. Democracy is under attack. People are under attack. We see Russia waging war against Ukrainians. We see Russia killing its own opposition leader. We see Russia waging war on children. Russia has forcibly removed almost 20,000 children from Ukraine. Only around 400 have been returned. Recently, Latvia hosted a conference that gave a voice to the returned Ukrainian children. Ilya, 11 years old boy. Sasha, 13 years old boy. Veronica, 16 years old girl. We listened to their heartbreaking stories. We also shared the joy of being returned. But the international community should not rest until all Ukrainian children are returned. Children are the future. We must protect them whatever it takes. The international community must also take all necessary steps to ensure full accountability for sexual and gender-based crimes. We must stand strongly for women's rights. We must continue to promote the women, peace and security agenda. We must do that at global level. Ladies and gentlemen, we must help those who are fighting to protect democracy. That is exactly what Ukraine is doing. For the right to exist as a sovereign, democratic country, free to choose its own future. And this is a difficult struggle. There can be moments of despair, and it is our duty to help until victory. Ukraine is fighting for us, even to some extent instead of us. Dear friends of democracy, we must make our societies more resilient in order to protect democracy. We need to address disinformation and the use of artificial intelligence, especially information manipulation by foreign actors. Together with Canada and the Alliance for Securing Democracy, Latvia has led cohort on information integrity to promote free and safe online environment. Let's protect the democracy for future generations.
Liechtenstein.
Dear President Yoon, dear fellow participants, I congratulate the Republic of Korea on hosting today's summit and on its leadership in advancing democracy. There are few places on earth where the successes of freedom and democracy shine more prominently against their opposite. Liechtenstein values the platform that this summit provides. It helps us to join forces for a world where individuals can thrive because they are free, because they have a voice and because they know that the law applies equally to all. The summit also increases our resilience and makes us better in facing challenges. Threats to our democratic way of life are on the rise worldwide, but they are not new. Generation after generation, democracy must be defended, must prove it can deliver, and must adapt to new threats. Today, artificial intelligence and cyber threats are paramount among them. Despite these threats, we must ensure free and fair elections, which are the living expression of democracy. This year is all about elections. Half of the world's population will be called to cast their votes, and every vote counts, including for the billion of people who do not have a vote. We owe them the highest standards of election integrity and our best efforts to prevent misinformation and corruption. At the same time, we must ensure the freedom of speech, which is key for living democracies. Liechtenstein is currently holding the presidency of the Council of Europe, and we are doing our best to strengthen democracy, human rights and the rule of law in our region and beyond. Our resilience will continue to be tested by aggressive actors. Our commitment to the fundamental principles of self-determination and the rule of law as enshrined in the UN Charter must remain strong. These principles apply equally to all, from the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific and wherever they are under pressure. There can be no doubt about our sincerity or about our standards. This is why Liechtenstein is so strongly committed to strengthening international law and justice. And this is why we need institutions that can deliver. Authoritarians are as much afraid of individual freedoms as they are of independent justice. Here lies our pathway to progress. Hold perpetrators of the gravest violations of international law to account in Russia, Syria, Myanmar, and all other places. Fight corruption and efforts to undermine democratic institutions with transparent governance, a diverse civil society, a thriving private sector, and free media. And embrace new technologies through education about risks and opportunities and responsible regulation where needed. I am glad that this summit shines a special light on these questions, and I assure you that Liechtenstein will continue to be an active voice in this process.
Lithuania.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we find ourselves at a pivotal moment. While multiple challenges cloud our future with uncertainty, what we need is a collective response based on the principles of international law and democracy. I stand before you today to underscore the unwavering commitment of Lithuania to the promotion of democracy, human rights, and accountability on the global stage. First and foremost, we call for Russia's legal accountability for its ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. We are consolidating efforts to restrict the ability of Russia and its accomplice Belarus to participate in international organizations. Lithuania will also continue advocating for lasting political, military, and humanitarian support for Ukraine. Moreover, there is a need to highlight the deteriorating human rights situation in Russia and Belarus. Recognizing that the state power there is being increasingly used to silence the opposing voices, Lithuania has emerged as a shelter for those fighting for democracy in Belarus and Russia. We are strongly committed to helping human rights defenders, journalists, and activists fleeing the oppressive regimes. I can also promise you that the Lithuanian presidency of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe this year will focus on promoting and protecting democratic values and principles against aggression and authoritarianism. Ultimately, the fate of Ukraine will be the most important yardstick to measure the success of the efforts of the whole democratic community. It's in the Ukrainian fields where the great battle for sovereignty, democracy, and human rights is now being fought. So let us stand united in our support for Ukraine as it strives towards a future of peace, prosperity, and European integration.
Malawi.
Ladies and gentlemen, Malawi has made great progress in pursuit of the commitments I made during the first Democracy Summit. To strengthen democracy, we have fully funded the Malawi Electoral Commission to conduct by-elections for councillors and parliamentarians, some of which are happening as we speak. In fact, the tripartite general elections slated for September next year have already been fully funded. And because the resources from our development partners are merely supplementary, we have ensured that Malawi's elections are an expression of our country's sovereignty. In readiness for those elections, we have also fulfilled the constitutional requirement to redemarcate constituency boundaries for a fair distribution of voters and development projects. To defend democracy against tyranny, we have repealed both sedition laws and insult laws that criminalized insults against the president and restricted freedom of expression. We have strengthened the Malawi Human Rights Commission enough to retain Malawi's seat on the United Nations Human Rights Council and Malawi's A status by the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. For the first time in Malawi's history, we have established an independent tribunal to handle violations of people's rights by the National Intelligence Service, as well as the establishment of Malawi Peace and Unity Commission to safeguard the peace Malawi is famous for. These oversight bodies now become part of our ongoing effort to strengthen all oversight bodies, including the two other branches of government. For example, we have strengthened the judiciary by appointing additional judges to the High Court and Supreme Court, as well as setting up a commercial crimes court that focuses on the speedy disposal of financial crimes. Similarly, the legislature continues to enjoy the protection of its power to summon the president to Parliament to answer questions. And we have been investing in the preparation of young people for decision-making roles in these branches, including the Malawi Youth Parliament, which meets twice a year and passes resolutions for the consideration of Parliament. Even the fourth estate has been given special attention, for we have amended the Penal Code to remove laws that have been used in the past to restrict freedom of the press. Meanwhile, in our quest to fight corruption, the Anti-Corruption Bureau has enjoyed more funding, more staffing, and more independence in the past 3 years than it has ever done in Malawi's history, resulting in its freedom to arrest and prosecute senior government officials without fear of reprisals. However, we recognize that it is better to raise an anti-corruption generation than to fight the corrupt one. And so we have introduced subjects in the primary school curriculum aimed at promoting values of integrity and civic duty. Our resolve as a country is to defend integrity, freedom, and justice wherever the threat of corruption, tyranny, and injustice rises, even if it upsets forces much larger than us. We oppose Russia's attack on Ukraine, Hamas's attack on Israel, M23's attack on the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Islamic State's attack on Mozambique. And we do so for one reason, simply because we believe there is no misunderstanding that cannot be resolved by peaceful means, nor is there any justification that one nation can launch an armed and violent attack on another. But not all assaults by one nation on another are military, which is why Malawi is also a champion of climate justice. Malawi has been assaulted by cyclones Idai, Anna, Gombe, and Freddy, which have killed thousands, displaced millions, and cost billions in infrastructure damage. These are not natural disasters, but man-made catastrophes that require the developed economies whose industrial actions caused them to make restitution through the provision of resources for loss and damage. Because climate change is the greatest threat to civil liberties that our world faces. Thank you for your attention.
Malta.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, representatives of civil society, ladies and gentlemen. I will begin by thanking the Republic of Korea for organizing the third summit of democracy. A very timely initiative indeed, providing us with a platform to revisit and engage on our democratic principles. This year, Malta will once again serve as an elected member on the United Nations Security Council, and in parallel, we are also the chairperson in office of the OSCE. In these key fora, Malta will continue to further the agenda of democratic resilience. Malta has worked tirelessly to deliver on our commitments, whilst also being proactive in advancing fundamental values. We are resolutely committed to enhancing democracy, and the amendments made to the media law framework attest to our unwavering resolve. Several anti-SLAPP measures have also been enacted. These provisions aim to provide increased protection to journalists and media professionals against SLAPP litigation. In the area of justice, we have also implemented numerous reforms to bolster both the legislative and institutional structures. And we achieved this by carrying out the necessary investments to bolster the independence of our justice system. In terms of gender mainstreaming, this remains a central pillar of the Maltese government's work. In 2022, Malta's first ever gender equality and mainstreaming strategy and action plan was launched, which reflects Malta's commitment to promoting equal opportunities and removing gender-based obstacles. The strategy aims to integrate a gender perspective in policy-making processes to ensure equality in various sectors. In this spirit, we are proud to have once again placed first in the ILGA Rainbow Europe Index for the 8th consecutive year. Last May, on the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, we launched our third LGBTIQ+ equality strategy and action plan. The strategy is the result of our partnership with the LGBTIQ+ civil society and various stakeholders. It addresses 10 core areas while incorporating 90 actions. Malta is also privileged to have hosted Europride in Valletta last September. Looking forward, Malta will host the OSCE Anti-Semitism Conference in April. The aim of this conference is to bring experts and policymakers together to reaffirm the pivotal importance of protecting minorities and promoting tolerance. Ladies and gentlemen, as our shared values and democratic identity remain under threat on a global scale, we should and must continue to emphasize that we will not compromise on our beliefs and values. Rather, we must come together in a spirit of understanding and cooperation to deliver on our commitments to further strengthen our democratic values.
Mauritius.
Mr. President, Excellencies, the Third Summit for Democracy gives us another opportunity to reaffirm our shared commitment to upholding democratic values and ideals. Mauritius prides itself on its reputation as a stable democracy. Our strong and independent institutions ensure that all our citizens, irrespective of race, political opinion, creed, or sex, are able to exercise their civil, political, social, and cultural rights. The judiciary of Mauritius is widely respected, and our impartial and independent justice system guarantees that the principle of equality and non-discrimination is strictly observed. Furthermore, our vibrant free press and the continuous strengthening of our institutions ensure that democracy continues to thrive in our country. Mauritius has maintained its standing as the foremost democracy on the African continent and currently ranks 21st as a full democracy in the Global Democracy Index. Mauritius has also consistently ranked first in the Mo Ibrahim Index of Governance and is first in Africa in the Human Freedom Index. We firmly believe that education and democracy are correlated and that democracy is a continuous process requiring constant nurturing and consolidation. This is why Mauritius is sparing no efforts to provide free education from pre-primary to tertiary levels. Despite being a small island developing state with limited resources and confronted with complex global challenges such as the climate emergency and slowdown in the global economy, Mauritius continues to expand the breadth and depth of its human rights framework. We have recently enacted the law establishing the Financial Crimes Commission, which will be the apex agency to detect, investigate, and prosecute financial crimes, particularly corruption offenses, money laundering offenses, and drug dealing offenses. Mr. President, this year will go down in history as the year of elections, as more than 60 countries will go to the polls. We are hopeful that the process will further reinforce political and civil liberties. Mauritius is resolutely committed to democratic values enshrined in its constitution. Democracy and international law should be universally respected for a peaceful and prosperous world. Thank you.
Moldova.
Dear President Yoon Suk-yeol, fellow leaders, ladies and gentlemen, it is good to reconnect on the occasion of the Summit for Democracy, and thank you to the Republic of Korea for hosting us in person and remotely. As we recommit to democratic consolidation, it is true that challenges could have not been greater. In Moldova, we have witnessed firsthand the relentless assault on our democracy that threatens our very way of life. We do all we can to ensure that the democratic principles are protected. The threats are, in some cases, new and novel, and we have to find new and novel solutions in response. Russia and its proxies have been stepping up their aggressive efforts to undermine Moldova for over 2 years. When Russia launched its unprovoked and brutal invasion of our neighbor, Ukraine, it also began an intensified hybrid attack against us. Its arsenal has included energy blackmail, paid anti-government protests, disinformation campaigns, election interference. They even attempted to overthrow our democratically elected government. But each time, they failed. We know that such activities will only increase ahead of this year's presidential election in Moldova and referendum on membership of the European Union. We will not allow them to exploit our very open and positive democratic process for their own very negative purposes. Instead, we are putting even greater efforts into consolidating our democracy. We're stronger and more confident now than we were 2 years ago. We have used our time to focus on justice reform and redoubling the fight against corruption while building our country's resilience. The toxic influence of oligarchs, many of them Russian proxies, is being reduced. They have all fled the country, with their activities affected by the sanctions which many of your countries have imposed on them. We thank you for supporting us in this struggle. This is not a battle which is won in a day or two. We see that with the reform of the justice system in Moldova. It is often a case of 2 steps forward and 1 step back as we face institutional resistance to change. But we have no intention of giving in, wherever the challenges. Our progress is reflected in international assessments. In the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, Moldova has climbed 15 places this year and 39 in the last 3 years, ranking 76 out of 180 countries. It reflects our commitment to fighting corruption and promoting the rule of law. There is still a long way to go in our journey, but never doubt our determination to get there. Our progress is bolstered by our path towards the EU membership. The accession talks agreed at the December European Council meeting will soon start. And even as we confront the challenges ahead, and ours in Moldova are not unique, let us never lose sight of the fundamental values that bind us together: democracy, freedom, and human rights. These are the values we want to be at the basis of our societies. So let us stand together, united in purpose and resolve. Moldova might be on the front line for the fight for democracy, but we know we are not alone. Together, we will win. Thank you.
Montenegro.
Distinguished President Yoon, dear colleagues, leaders of allied countries, it gives me a great pleasure to actively participate and speak at the Third Summit for Democracy that has proven to be the powerful and valuable international forum, pairing governmental and non-government actors dedicated to promoting democratic revival. Being part of the Western Balkans region, where security, stability, and democracy are still not fully consolidated, I would like to take this opportunity to commend our host country constructive approach and contribution that Republic of Korea has made to stimulate dialogue on the pressing challenges to the democracy worldwide. Distinguished colleagues, Government of Montenegro pursues policies based on the idea of Montenegro as a society of democratic values, committed to rules-based international order. Our achievements demonstrate that Montenegro is rapidly progressing towards the European Union. In the previous period, Montenegro invested legal, institutional, and political efforts, especially in the area of strengthening inclusive democracy, rule of law, fight against organized crime and corruption, human rights, capacity building, electoral reform, and security. Judicial appointments and numerous essential reforms in the rule of law area are clear indication that Montenegro is eager to take the final step towards the membership to EU, which, along credible NATO membership, is our strategic commitment. All our capacities are directed towards fulfilling interim benchmarks in our EU accession negotiation process so that we can then proceed with closing a significant number of chapters and seize the momentum to become the next member of the EU. In order to address underlying challenges emanating from Western Balkan region, full commitment of Western Balkan countries to the European and Euro-Atlantic values and integration has no alternative, while equally important, enhanced engagement from international community, in particular the EU and NATO, is also instrumental. With Russia's full-scale invasion and war in Gaza, our security architecture has dramatically worsened. We face a new security reality that is having major geopolitical consequences in the Western Balkans, and traditional and untraditional security threats are entwined. Considering changing security environment and different nature of challenges that affect us all, we are faced with the need to further strengthen resilience of our states and societies. One of our joint key future priorities need to be addressing the unprecedented misinformation and propaganda campaigns, which are aimed at undermining democratic values, cohesion in our societies, as well as trust and unity among us, and investing in resilient and well-informed citizens. May I remind you that Montenegro was targeted by several cyber attacks and therefore is strongly advocating the importance of improving democracy through technology. Establishing Western Balkan Regional Cyber Capacity Center in Montenegro in partnership with France and Slovenia in order to enhance cyber resilience of the Western Balkan region is the concrete action and clear evidence of our commitment to the global efforts for peace and stability in cyberspace. Dear allies, as a global community, let's act and stand up for the values that unite us, defend and strengthen our democracies. Thank you.
Netherlands.
Excellencies, fellow supporters and defenders of democracy. The late President Ronald Reagan once said, "The future is best decided by ballots, not bullets." And he was absolutely right. In fact, if you look at today's world, we can see he was right twice over. Firstly, because we only need to look at the ongoing war in Ukraine to see that freedom and democracy are not served by bullets, or by the idea that might is right. On the contrary. And secondly, in this super election year 2024, with over 60 individual countries and the European Union going to the ballot box, there's a lot at stake for the global future of democracy. Sadly, in many parts of the world, including Europe, democratic values and the rule of law are under increasing pressure. So 2024 is an important year and this is an important summit. I applaud the Republic of Korea for hosting this third summit for democracy. Thank you. We in the Netherlands greatly value the cooperation and long-lasting friendship between our countries. These ties were underlined during President Yoon's recent state visit to our country. We share the belief that democracy, human rights and the international rule of law are fundamental to peaceful, inclusive and prosperous societies. That conviction will remain at the heart of Dutch foreign policy, as it has for many years now. When the Netherlands co-hosted this summit last year, we focused on the role of a free press, both as a source of reliable information and as a key part of democratic control mechanisms. It pains me to say, in the Netherlands, journalists are being threatened more and more often. And we are seeing that happen in other countries too. That's why the Netherlands has co-chaired the International Media Freedom Coalition for the past 2 years. And why we will remain an active member of this group. It's absolutely crucial that government, civil society and legal experts keep working together to protect and strengthen the free press at both national and international level. In line with this, the Dutch government also remains committed to making sure that as many people as possible have access to open, safe and reliable online information. As chair of the Freedom Online Coalition, we work with our partners to ensure that democratic values and human rights are central concerns in the development of new technologies. To say that this is necessary would be an understatement, and not only because of current advances in AI. As the organization Freedom House continues to show year after year, internet freedom around the world is not growing. In fact, it's becoming ever more restricted. That's very concerning. And it demands concerted action, preferably through the multilateral UN channels. So I call on all of you to make sure that this year's UN Summit of the Future focuses on safeguarding democratic values as new technologies and information channels develop. We owe that to our young people, to the future, to democracy. Thank you.
Norway.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, more people will vote in 2024 than in any previous year in history. Let's welcome that because elections are fundamental to democracy. Elections help make governments accountable and more responsive to the needs of their citizens. That's fine. But we know, however, that elections are not enough to prove democracy. In themselves, elections do not create representative democracies. Authoritarian leadership can hide behind the ballot box. Leaders who deliberately breach democratic principles, embrace corrupt practices, and disregard human rights might be behind, often amplified by active disinformation. So, in this year of elections, we underline that true democratic elections are inclusive. They are transparent and they allow for informed voting made possible by freedom of expression, independent media and access to information. President, new technologies bring new opportunities. We know that. To communicate, to educate and to organize. At the same time, the very same technologies can also be used to curtail, to deny and to manipulate. In short, they can undermine democracy. So therefore, in this year of elections, we call on governments to refrain from shutting down digital communications around the electoral periods. This is essential because the internet remains a place and should remain a place for open debate that respects human rights and enables individuals to engage. Because we know civic space is the bedrock of an open and inclusive democracy. Last year, in 2023, we celebrated the anniversaries of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. We remain committed to their aims. We support human rights defenders online and offline, at home and abroad. We champion gender equality and women's rights. We promote a safe environment for journalists and media workers. We call for meaningful participation for civil society in policy and decision-making processes. Friends, in this year of elections, we are reminded that democracy is the best antidote to violence, conflict and war, and that democracy is founded on the rule of law. It simply begins with ensuring human rights for all, independent of religion, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or other status. And we know that there are those brave people out there fighting for democracy, the true spirit of democracy, who are prosecuted and even killed in the pursuit of democratic values. So let's turn our backs to that and let us really walk forward for a true sense of democracy in the year of election and in the years of elections to come. Thank you.
North Macedonia.
Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished participants. At the beginning, allow me to thank the President of the Republic of Korea for inviting me to participate in the Third Democracy Summit and to address today's session focused on an extremely important topic. I sincerely believe it is an issue which is among the priorities for each of us as leaders. In order to have inclusive and just societies, we must create conditions for every individual, regardless of their ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, social background, political affiliation, physical or intellectual status, to be able to integrate and participate equally in every segment of society and to be accepted fully by the community. For this purpose, it is necessary to continue raising public awareness, debunking the prejudices and stereotypes, improving the policies and legislation to prevent and protect against discrimination, and to provide for the persistent institutional support. Only in that manner, we will create inclusive environments in which the knowledge, skills, and integrity of the person will be decisive for success. I am especially proud that on my initiative as President, the Framework for Development, MKD 2030, was adopted, in which, among the 4 key areas that North Macedonia focuses on, are youth and inclusive growth. In order to encourage young people to build a future in their own country, to be the agents of positive change, we will continue to invest in their education, encourage youth activism, and involve them in policy making. Modern and inclusive education is the channel for social mobility, which will help young people to have a better life than that of their parents. If we do not collectively commit to the preservation of democratic values, we risk young people becoming victims of authoritarian and populist ideologies which have recently found fertile ground even in highly developed societies. I am confident that our common goal is for future generations to live in societies in which diversity will be an investment in progress and not grounds for divisions. I thank you for your attention.
Panama.
Excelencias, la difícil situación mundial derivada de conflictos bélicos, migraciones irregulares, crimen transnacional organizado y la crisis climática global, con los riesgos que ello implica para la humanidad, seguirán siendo en el futuro inmediato los enormes desafíos que han de enfrentar los gobiernos democráticos. Estos grandes retos demandan la participación de las mayorías porque cada quien tiene que asumir su responsabilidad en los factores que originan estas crisis y ello nos obliga aún más a profundizar en el fortalecimiento de nuestro sistema democrático. Durante mi gobierno, he defendido la institucionalidad democrática en mi país, actuando con estricto respeto a la separación de poderes, protegiendo los derechos humanos, actuando con riguroso apego a la ley, fortaleciendo la transparencia. Además, he impulsado políticas públicas que permiten que las acciones del Estado estén más cerca de los ciudadanos, especialmente en favor de los más vulnerables, con el propósito de llevarles soluciones concretas que puedan sentar las bases para lograr su inclusión en la economía y en el desarrollo humano integral. Señoras y señores, la participación ciudadana en la democracia se favorece con un gobierno de puertas abiertas, que escucha a todos los sectores, que atiende las demandas de la sociedad, que respeta la voluntad de la población. Ese propósito ha sido el principio en el que se basa la acción de mi gobierno. Ese es nuestro compromiso con los principios democráticos. Con esa misma determinación, nos enfocamos en el proceso electoral del próximo 5 de mayo, que permitirá al pueblo panameño ejercer su derecho al libre sufragio, y estoy comprometido con facilitar una transición ordenada para la instalación de las nuevas autoridades elegidas en democracia. Señoras y señores, la República de Panamá ocupa un estrecho istmo que une a las Américas del Norte y del Sur, con la mejor conectividad marítima y aérea de América Latina y el Caribe, con una vocación histórica hacia el entendimiento y el diálogo multilateral. En ese contexto, somos conscientes de la importancia de contribuir a la consolidación de democracias robustas, eficaces, que puedan cimentar sociedades más justas, donde hombres y mujeres, sin discriminación, tengan la oportunidad de vivir en libertad, con desarrollo integral, justicia y paz. Que en ese espíritu de consolidación de la democracia, los líderes de hoy, pensando en el mañana, valoren la participación ciudadana y la tolerancia de las ideas como una ruta segura hacia un mejor futuro. Quiero finalizar mi intervención recordando el llamado que hice en la segunda cumbre por la democracia, cuando mencioné la necesidad de pasar de los discursos a las acciones concretas. En ese sentido, reitero, de nada sirve exaltar las virtudes de la democracia como sistema si el ejercicio democrático no contribuye a mejorar la vida de los ciudadanos. Muchas gracias.
Paraguay.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very honored and grateful to be with you in this third summit of democracy, an initiative that will undoubtedly contribute to strengthening the positive agenda to address the challenges that democracies face. The importance of representative democracy for promoting global stability and development is becoming more and more evident. In the absence of democracy and reliable internal checks and balances, political power becomes a significant threat to peace and undermine basic rights, such as the right to choose leaders and express opinion without fear of reprisal. These actions weaken the basis of peaceful coexistence and should not be normalized. Therefore, we express our concern regarding the authoritarian regime that still persists in the world. Furthermore, we reaffirm our commitment on preserving and strengthening our democracies. We are proud to say that Paraguay is currently consolidating the longest period of democratic coexistence in its history, with pluralistic participation, electoral legitimacy, and full respect for individual freedoms. We are convinced that there is no stronger safeguard for democracy than a strengthened rule of law, with reliable institutions and a high level of credibility among the population. Therefore, equal treatment under the law, legal certainty, and judicial efficiency are essential pillars of democracy. The fight against corruption is a central interest and the greatest challenge facing the Republic of Paraguay. My country has undertaken significant institutional effort to enhance transparency in governance, ensure accountability, and thereby uphold trust within our society and the international community. Human rights are non-negotiable in democratic society, and their promotion has been a central element in Paraguay's foreign policy. A truly effective approach to human rights must include fundamental freedoms, but also favorable economic conditions for development and prosperity, allowing people not only to exist, but to live with dignity and opportunities. Global economic recovery is a fundamental as it lays the groundwork for solid and stable democracy. We must not step back until we achieve an institutional framework with clear rules aimed at facilitating international trade, investment, and economic cooperation among nations. For Paraguay, as a landlocked developing country, the principles of international law are particularly crucial. Excellencies, Fernando Sabater stated that democracy is the political manifestation of respect for others. Ultimately, our commitment is not to a political system, but to the dignity of all individuals. A life in freedom, justice, and dignity is not merely an idea of the Western world. It is a deeply rooted aspiration of humanity that transcends cultural and geographic boundaries. Distinguished leaders, let us keep this in mind as we work toward this ideal. Thank you very much.
Peru.
I would like to thank the Republic of Korea for organizing this third Summit for Democracy, which allows us to reaffirm our commitment to the main objectives and pillars of this summit. Since the beginning of my mandate, my government has sought to promote dialogue, respect, and collaboration at all levels of the state, with the objective of implementing public policies and quality services, as well as to reactivate the economy for the benefit of all citizens. I take this opportunity to reaffirm Peru's historic commitment to the respect and protection of human rights, which constitutes one of the fundamental pillars of the democratic system and the strengthening of governance. I can confidently affirm that Peru will continue to participate actively in the various multilateral and regional forums on the subject, guided by its commitments regarding the importance of combating xenophobia and all forms of discrimination, of strengthening migratory governance, and of balancing economic development and environmental protection, among other matters that concern us. Finally, with regard to the fight against corruption, my government has taken measures to strengthen the integrity of public institutions. For example, the implementation of the integrity model in public administration entities, regulatory reforms, and the tools promoted in matters of conflicts of interest, interest management, transparency, suitability in public service, revolving doors, whistleblower mechanisms, and whistleblower protection, among others. In this regard, we have strengthened the High-Level Anti-Corruption Commission and the National Open Government Plan 2023-2024 was approved, which has a space for monitoring and follow-up through a multi-stakeholder forum with the participation of citizens, the private sector, civil society, and academia, among others. I conclude by reaffirming Peru's commitment to the initiative to work in the international coalition to defend and strengthen democracy, because only in democracy can we achieve fairer, more equitable, and developed societies. Thank you very much to all of you.
Philippines.
Your Excellency President Yoon Suk-yeol, my sincere felicitations on hosting this third Summit for Democracy. 2024 is an auspicious year for democracy. This year, a record number of around 70 countries representing almost half of the world's population, will hold elections. This gives us hope that democracy is alive and thriving, that the people's voices continue to be heard, and that we in government remain responsive to the needs and interests of the people that we serve. Despite our best efforts, however, we have observed a number of worrying trends that threaten our democratic spaces, particularly the rise in disinformation that sows discord and polarization, persistent political and socio-economic inequalities that erode trust in government, and challenges to the rule of law. For democracy to endure and to remain relevant for the next generation, we must future-proof our democratic institutions, our processes, and our policies. We recognize three imperatives that will shape the future of democracy. First, recognizing that artificial intelligence will impact democracy in transformative and meaningful ways. AI development must go hand in hand with respect for human values, ethics, and principles. AI technology is rapidly revolutionizing decision-making, reshaping public discourse, and accelerating information sharing. At the same time, it has a potential to tip electoral scales towards interference through the generation, amplification, and dissemination of disinformation, creating very consequential and undesirable outcomes. While I announced last year at APEC that the Philippines is embracing AI, my government also launched the Media and Information Literacy Project to educate Filipinos in discerning fact from fake. While we welcome healthy discourse on free speech, there is an urgent need to address the spread of misinformation. Second, democracy must remain inclusive and participatory, leaving no one behind. We must encourage the youth, the leaders and voters of tomorrow, to remain engaged and active in our democratic processes. For this to happen, we need to foster an enabling and welcoming political environment, facilitate access to quality education and accurate information, and provide the youth with leadership and policy-making opportunities. We must likewise encourage and support women in pursuing leadership positions, especially in government. Globally, women's political participation remains low, as less than a quarter of high-level executive, legislative, and judiciary positions are occupied by women. At the same time, democracy must work for the people, translating into tangible progress and sustainable development. Finally, we must continue to champion the rule of law. We must continue to uphold the independence and impartiality of our legal institutions, strengthen our well-established accountability mechanisms, respect and adhere to the decisions of the judiciary, and recognize that judicial processes, including arbitration, are valid forms of the peaceful settlement of disputes. Rules and laws must be stable, predictable, and non-discriminatory. And we must ensure that they are not weaponized to further self-serving political objectives. In closing, my administration looks forward to working closely with our like-minded partners in advancing these 3 points, always putting our peoples and their freedoms at the center in pursuit of our shared respect for democratic values and principles. Thank you.
Poland.
Distinguished Mr. President, leaders of the democratic world, ladies and gentlemen. At 2 former editions of the Summit for Democracy, I spoke much about situation in Belarus, where human rights are brutally violated, and about Ukraine, which fell victim to Russian aggression more than 2 years ago. We all know that the imperial policy implemented by Russia is actually rooted in fear. The fear of Putin that the Ukrainian and Belarusian societies who would like to integrate with the West and follow its values will have better and more prosperous lives than Russia can offer. It is Russia and its allies who are posing the biggest threats to democracy. The criminal Kremlin regime continues to destabilize various places across the globe using disinformation campaigns, the so-called agents of influence, and interfering in internal affairs. That includes also the democratic decision-making processes, such as the electoral one. By doing so, Moscow strives to discredit democracy and undermine citizens' confidence in their states and politicians. It is the authoritarian states, however, which put their citizens at risk. The authorities of such countries don't care about rights and freedoms. One example of that are Russian political prisoners who are repeatedly eliminated, just like Alexei Navalny. Another example are Russian citizens who are treated as cannon fodder in the war with Ukraine. Or Russian elections, which have nothing to do with the democratic electoral process. Therefore, a challenge for our democratic community is to counter destabilizing activities of such regimes all around the world and to support their victims. I urge all of us to act in solidarity to that aim, for the sake of democracy. Thank you.
Serbia.
The Republic of Serbia attaches the utmost importance to the promotion and protection of human rights and to the strengthening of capacities for their exercise, including the enhancement of national legislation and existing mechanisms. We are particularly committed to combating all forms of discrimination and to the promotion of diversity, which we see as the foundation of a modern, tolerant and progressive society. I'm pleased to point out that since last year's Second Summit for Democracy, progress has been made in nearly all areas covered by the rule of law in fulfilling the recommendations of GRECO, the judiciary cooperation with independent bodies and institutions, while also promoting electoral conditions, the media scene and fundamental rights. The constitutional reform was successfully implemented. A set of judicial laws was adopted encompassing a wide range of issues important for the proper functioning of the judiciary and for ensuring the independence of the judiciary and the independence of the public prosecution. We pay special attention to the freedom of the media and ensuring the safety of journalists. The new law on electronic communications was passed last year, as were the law on public information and media and the law on electronic media. The adoption of these laws is an important step towards the further improvement of the media scene in Serbia, as well as the further implementation of the strategy for the development of the public information system in the Republic of Serbia for the period 2020-2025. Aware that there is no development without peace, but no peace without development either, the Republic of Serbia makes the best of its effort when it comes to achieving the sustainable development goals and applying the principles on which they are based. We strive to incorporate these principles into national policies in order to create equal opportunities for all, so that no part of our society and no individual is left behind. The Republic of Serbia is a modern country, but also loyal to tradition, multicultural, tolerant, and fully committed to democratic values. We will continue on these very foundations to invest in creating an even more successful and prosperous Serbia. I hope that you will be able to see for yourself that this is the case in 2027 in the capital of the Republic of Serbia, Belgrade, which, owing to the trust shown by a large number of countries, has been chosen as the host of the renowned international event Expo 2027. The Republic of Serbia will seize this opportunity to present to the whole world its development potential, human and economic capacities, as well as the hospitality inherent to the Serbian people. Serbia will continue to be a credible partner in joint efforts aimed at creating a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Slovakia.
Your Excellencies, dear all, let me thank the Republic of Korea for hosting this year's summit and a stimulating debate on issues which I see as critical to how we function as democracies in the 21st century. In a digital world, disinformation spreads faster than ever. This can have grave consequences also for our democracies. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that disinformation can literally kill. Promoting polarization and fragmentation, disinformation weakens our societies and weakens the ability of democratic governments to act. These days, Much of the disinformation is spread through social media. I am not talking about small or online random lies, but about massive coordinated campaigns using troll farms or deepfakes. Indeed, social media have become the favorite platform, not just for our citizens, but also for extremists and those who want to attack other people's rights. Moreover, undemocratic regimes have already used the social media platforms to influence democratic elections. In a way, we see democratic tools, such as freedom of speech, being abused to undermine democracy itself. To protect our democracies, we cannot ignore this fact. We must act and advance democratic regulation of social media platforms. We need more transparent and predictable rules, which are rooted in our fundamental democratic values. I am glad that in the European Union we have made some first steps in this direction. But this needs to be a global democratic effort and include areas such as the removal of illegal content or prevention of foreign manipulated disinformation. Social media platforms already have the tools to do most of this. They must be used systematically. None of this is calling for censorship. I grew up in communist Czechoslovakia, and I know well what unfreedom is. In a democracy, every right is limited by the rights and freedoms of others. And this must also extend to the online space. That, my colleagues, is a way forward to safeguard our democracy. Thank you.
Slovenia.
Greetings, everyone. I'm happy to participate in this important endeavor, and I would welcome the opportunity to report that there is more democracy in the world. Unfortunately, I cannot do that. We must acknowledge that in so many places on this planet, we are failing the basic test of democracy, the ability to ensure human dignity for all, not just a few. More than 6.5 million Sudanese have been forced to flee their homes due to the ongoing conflict. More than 17 million people there are suffering from severe hunger. In Yemen, more than half of the population suffers from hunger. More than 14 million people in Ukraine are dependent on humanitarian assistance. This is not the way to more democracy. We know that hate breeds hate, often for generations. Nowhere is this more evident than in Gaza, a place of dehumanization on an unimaginable scale. No one knows how many generations it will take for Israelis and Palestinians to reconcile and live in true peace, not the kind where a wall separates the two peoples. And all this only after the mass human suffering has come to an end and the Gaza Strip has been reduced to rubble. This is an election year for half the world's population. But it is also a year accompanied by the bitter realization that democratic freedoms are giving way to populist black and white views, quick fixes for the people and elites which populists often belong to or have created. The breeding ground for all these developments exists because we are not closing the gap between those who have everything and more, and those who have nothing and are getting poorer and poorer. And we do not care about the side effects of the often cruel logic of profit and its impact on the ground. Let there be no doubt. Our democracies need to be strengthened, in some cases preserved, and even defended. But we should also lead by example. Strengthening our democracies means holding genuinely free and fair elections, having real freedom of the press, zero tolerance for any form of racism, neo-fascism, anti-Semitism, or religious, racial, and other intolerance. Democracy also means taking care of the poor, for everyone, everywhere. In this way, we help create the conditions for peace in our countries and give democracy a high moral value elsewhere. In other words, Only if we can prove that democracy can and must benefit all citizens will our words carry weight and the calls for peace in Gaza, Sudan, Yemen, and elsewhere not fall on deaf ears. The United Nations must also receive the support of democracies. The debate on UN reform must not be put on hold. Yes, reforming the UN is a lengthy process, but who dares to collaborate on repeating the history of the League of Nations? There are so many conflicts occurring right now, which tells us loud and clear that the United Nations is needed more than ever. Yes, it can do better, and it is down to us, the democracies, to do everything in our power to make it better.
Sri Lanka.
Excellencies, esteemed delegates, Sri Lanka's historically tolerant and egalitarian culture makes us naturally receptive to the institutions and practices of modern democracy. We are the oldest democracy in Asia, with universal adult franchise being practiced for both men and women as far back as 1931. For over 7 decades since independence, we have governed through democratic institutions which are enshrined in our Constitution, such as representative government, separation of powers, and an independent judiciary. Constitutionally guaranteed rights and freedoms are justiciable through our independent court system. Our elected leaders have been accountable to the people at regular intervals and following free and fair elections with high voter participation, orderly transition of power at local, provincial, and national levels have taken place. Democracy everywhere is work in progress, including in Sri Lanka. We have also had to protect these institutions from challenges and threats. In the north and east of the country, we have restored democracy and freedom of expression, suppressed for decades by terrorism. More recently, our people showed restraint and ensured a peaceful transition of power within a democratic, constitutional, and institutional framework following widespread social protest. Democratic rights and liberties must be exercised with responsibilities and duties towards others and towards society. We have also realized an ecosystem for meaningful participation by the people in democratic life by creating space for vibrant print and electronic media in all languages, as well as vigilant and active civil society from grassroots to national levels in all parts of the country. Furthermore, successive governments have invested heavily in human development, allowing for meaningful and enlightened participation by all citizens in social and political life, reflected in high standards of gender equality, healthcare, education for men and women, and life expectancy, among others. Despite the recent economic challenges and the resulting restriction on fiscal space, we are committed to ensuring social protection for the vulnerable through initiatives such as Aswasuma Social Welfare Program, the Suraksha Program, extending insurance coverage to school children, and the newly launched Urume Program to restore land rights. Economic recovery has restored stability and security, and we will establish a sustainable economy where growth benefits all. Simultaneously, we are taking measures to strengthen national unity, post-conflict reconciliation, and human rights, as well as to strengthen governance and increase transparency in order to guard against corruption and other vulnerabilities. At this summit for democracy, we must also speak up for democracy, justice, and equity in the international system. In order to realize peace, security, and development for For the vast majority of the global population, we must eradicate global disparities and ensure that no one and no country is left behind. Unrepresentative international structures of global governance and finance, which continue to serve the interests of a few, must be reformed. We need climate justice and financing for the energy transition to bridge the global digital and technological divides and rescue the SDGs. We must also abide by the rules and institutions for free trade that seek to create a level playing field for international trade while providing just handicaps for unequal players. Freedom must also extend to the global commons, allowing freedom of navigation for trade and prosperity of all. Today, it's clear that democracy is in retreat and at risk in its developed and prosperous strongholds as a result of growing popular intolerance fueled by the outcomes of crisis, debt, and poverty in the global south. The right to self-determination must be realized for the people of Palestine, along with security for all states in the region. I thank you.
Suriname.
Excellency, co-hosts, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good day. I am honored to participate in this third Summit for Democracy, given the importance of this topic in our world of today, with the theme, Democracy for Future Generations. I wish to highlight the importance of empowering youth and restoring their trust in democracy. It is essential that we include them in political decisions from a very young age. They need to be at the center of our actions for democracy. Democracy is of great importance for human development. When people have free will and live freely, they will be happier. Democracy has stood the test of time. While other forms of governance have largely been challenging, democracy has stood strong. Furthermore, democracy creates equal rights, ensuring equality across the country. Subsequently, it also creates duties. These duties make better informed citizens and are also crucial for the sustainable development of our countries. In addition, ladies and gentlemen, democracy allows people of various religions and cultures to accept each other peacefully. I mention my country, Suriname, as an example. Excellency, however, there is no perfect form of democracy. To strengthen our democracies, governments must implement laws to ensure the values of democracy. In addition to the above-mentioned, awareness programs then must inform citizens of their rights and responsibilities. My country, Suriname, has taken steps to improve democratic principles. Recently, the Parliament adopted an amendment of the electoral system which expresses the principle of equal representation in voting nationwide on the national and local levels. One cannot fully experience democracy without periodic, free, fair, and general elections, which provide a unique opportunity for citizens to indicate their priorities, interests, and also concerns. Suriname promotes freedom of speech, which provides transparency in a democracy. Therefore, the media must be protected, and we should promote the improvement of press freedom and strengthen media professionalism and ethical journalism. Excellency, globally we see that people's voice is often muffled. We must build stronger institutions for equal and inclusive societies with an independent judicial system and the rule of law for everyone. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to a fruitful conclusion of the Third Summit of Democracy with broad support for the continuation of the strengthening of democracy and its institutions while also upholding the principles of international law and promoting respect for human rights. I thank you, and may God bless you all.
Sweden.
Dear friends, let me thank the Republic of Korea for organizing the Third Summit for Democracy, taking place at a time when the principles and values of our free societies are being challenged. Today, our states come together motivated by a common belief in freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Our unwavering support to Ukraine's freedom is a top priority. The people of Ukraine are not only protecting their own independence and democracy against Russian aggression, but also ours. The commitment we make here serves to strengthen democracy in our countries. Let me therefore highlight some progress made on Sweden's commitment since the first Summit of Democracy. We have established an agency for psychological defense to counter disinformation. We have tasked government agencies to combat gender and honor-based violence in support of women's and girls' rights. A Holocaust museum has been opened and education programs introduced to help countering anti-Semitism. Sweden is also among the world's largest donors in support of democracy, freedom of expression, and free media. We are now launching new initiatives to improve conditions for free elections and to increase support to human rights defenders. The internet must remain open, free, and secure. We are pleased that Sweden's ambassador to the UN has been entrusted to co-facilitate the Global Digital Compact and look forward to a robust digital framework with human rights at its core. The future holds many challenges to our freedom. Our response must be a democracy that serves its citizens, delivering development and standing up for freedom everywhere and for everyone. Thank you so much.
Tanzania.
Your Excellency Yoon Suk-yeol, President of the Republic of Korea, my fellow heads of state and government, I wish to commend and appreciate the Republic of Korea for hosting this year's summit. The year 2024 is a big year for democracy. Democracies, large and small, are set to hold national and local elections. In Tanzania, since the restoration of multi-party democracy in 1992, we are now set to hold the 7th round of local government election this year, followed by the national election next year, 2025. We endeavor to further consolidate our democracy trajectory by marking 30 years of an uninterrupted multi-party democracy. As such, I'm delighted to once again join you in this important summit, which avails us with another opportunity to review and reiterate our pledges on strengthening democracy, promoting respect for human rights, and upholding good governance in our respective countries. Your Excellencies, it goes without saying, but still bears repeating, that the investment that we make in democracy today is critical for future generations. Since 2021, we in Tanzania have deliberated and made pledges that have not only propelled us to strengthen our democracies, but also pushed us to consolidate policies, institutional and regulatory reforms in order to improve and meet the aspiration of our people, especially the youth. Since the last summit for democracy and in our quest to strengthen democracy, Tanzania has recorded a number of milestones. We have dwelt in building on the principles of what we refer to as 4 R's, namely reconciliation, resilience, reforms, and rebuilding, to further open up the civic and political space and foster inclusive democratic participation. The summit will recall that last year, Tanzania reported of the establishment of an independent task force to review and advise on necessary reforms in the entire political ecosystems in the country. I'm pleased to inform that the challenges raised by political stakeholders were addressed and opened a new chapter in our democratic journey. I'm also happy to notify that political parties have continued to enjoy their rights of assembly, including holding rallies across the country. Tanzanian government has also given high priority to the promotion of freedom of speech, including creating a more conducive environment for journalists and media houses to conduct their duties. Your Excellencies, the United Republic of Tanzania reaffirms the commitment to support democracy, human rights, and good governance at home and abroad. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thailand.
It is with great honor and a deep sense of responsibility that I stand before you today, representing Thailand for the first time at the Summit for Democracy. Last year's general elections in Thailand and the establishment of a civilian-led government signify a significant step towards reinforcing our democratic values. My administration is dedicating to strengthening democratic institutions within our borders and prioritizing democracy, the rule of law, and the human rights, both at home and in our foreign relations. Today, democracy confronts global challenges, rising inequality and social media's divisive influence. Without our unity, a peaceful democratic future is at risk. Allow me to elaborate on these pressing challenges. First, democracy needs good governance, citizen participation, inclusive society, the rule of law, and human rights. A successful democracy must be able to address the multidimensional needs of the people, consisting of civil and political rights, as well as social, economic, and cultural rights, while acknowledging the challenges and limitations inherited from the recent past. My government remains committed to promoting such rights, building upon achievements like universal health coverage and education for all. Most importantly, I'm proud of the progress of our marriage equal bill, currently in the parliament, which help promote greater social inclusivity and equality. Second, democracy is an ongoing process, not a final destination. It requires continuous effort and nurturing to be sustainable. To fulfill our people's expectations, democracy must adapt and evolve. For nations with the scars of the setbacks in democracy, managing public expectations and nurturing democratic progress is an ongoing endeavor that demands unwavering commitment. Third, there is no one-size-fits-all democracy, but democratic principle must be one and universal. As much as we believe in its values, there are diverse forms of democracies and political systems around the world. All of us are facing common global and intergenerational challenges ranging from climate change and the environment to the digital divide. What the world needs now is greater international cooperation, stronger multilateralism, and more humanitarian cooperation. I would like to conclude by saying that we, the leaders, must always listen to and respect people's will. Leaders also have to hear more from the younger ones. After all, that is how we can best ensure that democracy will continue to thrive and serve as an essential foundation for the betterment of our future generations.
Zambia.
Ladies and gentlemen, As we gather here today under the auspicious theme, Democracy for Future Generations, we are compelled to reflect on the profound significance of our collective actions. Democracy, as the cornerstone of our societies, stands as our strongest system of governance and as a beacon of hope, progress, and equality for generations to come. The principle of democracy lies in its inclusivity, its recognition of the dignity and worth of every individual. It is therefore a system that empowers voices which are often marginalized, and it ensures that all members of society have a role in shaping their collective purpose. In this regard, the Summit for Democracy stands as an important platform to share our ideas for the enhancement of our democracies. Following the last summit a year ago, we have remained committed to deepening our democracy and good governance. Since we were elected to office in August 2021, we have eliminated the autocratic laws which limited freedom of our citizens, such as the criminal defamation of the president and the death penalty, just to mention a few. This year, we are introducing the Public Gatherings Bill, and we have already introduced, in fact enacted, the Access to Information Act. Now, more than ever, our citizens are free to debate issues without fear of reprisal. Through democracy, we have continued to promote the participation of our citizens in decision-making, as well as holding their government accountable. We remain resolved to ensuring that the citizens of Zambia, our beloved country Zambia, derive the much-needed benefits of democracy. To widen the democratic space, more and more radio and TV stations have been opened in our country, while at the same time ensuring that rural areas receive the radio signal from the national broadcaster. Very important. This has been done to ensure that citizens are well informed, they participate in national affairs, and make informed decisions on public affairs. In this crucial moment, we face challenges that demand our unwavering commitment to democratic principles. Therefore, our actions today will undoubtedly shape the world that our children and future generations will inherit from us. Now is the time for bold and decisive action. We must reaffirm our commitment to upholding the rule of law, protecting human rights, and fostering transparency and accountability in all facets of governance. Only by nurturing these principles can we safeguard democracy for future generations. Moreover, we must harness the power of technology and innovation to strengthen democratic institutions and amplify civic participation. By leveraging digital tools, we can enhance access to information, promote political engagement, and fortify the resilience of our democracies against emerging threats, which are many, by the way. In closing, let us remember that the legacy we leave behind will echo through the records of history. It is our duty as stewards of democracy to ensure that the world we bestow our children with is one defined by justice, equality, and indeed, opportunity for all. Together, let us rise to the challenge and build a future worth of their dreams. I thank you for your kind attention.
Luxembourg.
Prime Ministers, Ministers, dear colleagues and friends, it's a great honor to represent my country, Luxembourg, at the 3rd World Summit for Democracy. I recently participated in the 55th session of the Human Rights Council in Geneva, of which my country is a member until the end of this year. The main take-out from it and the previous sessions is that the world has become more authoritarian than at any point since the 80s. Many democratic governments are backsliding and are adopting authoritarian tactics by restricting free speech and weakening the rule of law. This trend was aggraved by many factors, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, where I have to tell you, I was surprised even how much people accepted restriction of liberties, and this should be the exception, not the rule. We see also regional crises and conflicts, technological evolutions, organized crime, disinformation, and climate change, just to name just a few. According to the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, 2022 was the 6th consecutive year in which more countries experienced net declines in democratic processes than net improvements. This 6-year pattern of decline is the longest of the kind since 1975. Is it therefore all the more important that we continue to work together to uphold and strengthen democratic values? Luxembourg is and will continue to be a strong advocate of democracy. As a sign of this commitment, both at home and abroad, we are chairing the Council of Member States of the International Institute of Democracy and Electoral Assistance this year. Last year, Luxembourg also went through 2 electoral cycles and adopted a new constitution, a process that took more than a decade. Our democratic institutions and processes are strong, but we still need to defend them each and every day. And you see changes. I was Prime Minister last year, I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs this year, and this happened in 1 month democratically. Our universalist democratic model is in crisis, and we should not be afraid of saying so. Our citizens are scared, and they are looking for clear answers to often complex problems. And so that is the biggest challenge, because we Democrats usually have very long answers to the easiest questions, and populists have the shortest answer to the complicated question. But believe in what you say. My continent Europe is often seen as the democratic paradise, but believe me, we can see it in European countries, in my family members of the European family. Rights of judges, right of press are not guaranteed. So we should also take care what is happening in our own continent. We've seen with the Russian invasion of Ukraine that it's clear that we are at a stake when democratization efforts fail. If we fail in Ukraine, a democracy, it will signify that borders can be changed by any authoritarian regime because they just think they are stronger. Our youth worry about their future. They are questioning whether democracy can deliver on their aspirations and in particular tackle the climate and environment crisis, which threaten their future. This 3rd Summit for Democracy should therefore not just be a symbolic gathering of world leaders of genuine democracies, but also a wake-up call. We need to support each other when it comes to democratic principles and processes, such as elections, transparency and access to information, accountability, the protection of civic spaces, or independent institutions. We would also stand side by side when we are under attack through disinformation, economic or hybrid threats, and even warfare, as we are witnessing in Ukraine and other places across the globe. We also need to be more vocal on why democracy, with all its failings, remains the best systems by far, to allow each human being, whatever the gender, origin, social status, political opinion, sexual orientation, are free to be free persons. We need to show more clearly that democracy can deliver solutions for both the global and local challenges of our days. Democracy should never be simply the rule of the majority, but a fluid system in which minorities and marginalized groups are also protected and have the right to be how they are. It should not be seen as a Western model for rich countries, but as the best way to achieve economic, social and political growth, stability and sustainability also for all. Dear colleagues, after years of backsliding and with numerous elections looming across our membership, this year time has come to fight back and define our democratic way of life.
Antigua and Barbuda.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and honor to address you in Seoul, South Korea, while I remain in my Caribbean island country. Islands like mine became sovereign states because of the United Nations Resolution 1514, adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1960. One writer from Antigua and Barbuda described this change in circumstances as, I quote, democracy by diplomacy, end of quote. The decisions taken by the diplomats at the United Nations on the instructions of their governments brought freedom and sovereignty without bloodshed to countries that were, before the decision, places where democracy did not exist and colonialism dominated. Democratic ideals are measured through free and fair elections, a legislature that is free to pass laws, the freedom of judiciary to decide cases without coercion, free access to information, especially through an unfettered press, and freedom of association, including the right to practice the religion of one's choice. These are the most enduring standards utilized by Antigua and Barbuda to determine whether democracy controls. Democracy can be undermined by criminal gangs that rely on kidnapping, murder, extortion, and the illegal use of force in order to achieve ends that offend the law. The Republic of Haiti, the oldest sovereign state in my Caribbean, suffers from that malady as we speak. Criminals have undermined the rule of law and the authority of the state by arming themselves with military-grade weapons. The sovereign states of our Caribbean have appealed to the world for help, and Kenya has answered that call along with Haiti's Caribbean neighbors. The Caribbean island states also find their security is threatened by the global climate change phenomenon and other maladies created by industrial countries that have used our skies for centuries as a dumping ground for billions of tons of unwanted gases and particulate matter. That behavior has endangered our island countries and low-lying coastal states in the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and elsewhere. My country will host the 4th United Nations Conference on Small Island Developing States, SID4, beginning May 27 to May 30, 2024 in Antigua. It is our expectation that several important outcomes will mark the success of the SID4 conference. As you gather in Seoul to examine democratic trends across the globe, I caution that democracy's survival is very much dependent on the commitment of statesmanship and unrelenting adherence to the ideal which have saved humanity from wars and destruction. I wish the 3rd Summit on Democracy all the success and thank the government of South Korea for playing so important a role. Thank you.
Argentina.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished leaders, I'd like to thank the government of the Republic of Korea for hosting this 3rd Summit for Democracy. It is an honor to be here, and I regret I cannot be there in person. I extend my gratitude to all those present for their unwavering commitment to the fundamental values that underpin our free and fair societies. It is the 3rd time Argentina is part of this relevant event. It was initiated in the United States in December 2021. At the time, it was a global meeting with 100 government leaders. We acknowledge and understand that strengthening our democratic institutions requires constant effort, as President Biden said in the 2nd summit in Washington. I'd like to take this opportunity to renew Argentina's commitment to strengthening the democratic institutions to combat corruption and to protect fundamental freedoms. Corruption poses significant drawbacks to society on multiple fronts. First, it acts as a deterrent to investment due to increased risk, uncertainty associated with it, many other reasons. Second, it undermines fair competition by providing unfair advantages to those willing to engage in corrupt practices. And third, corruption exacerbates inequality. It diverts resources away from public goods and services, and therefore these adverse effects not only hinder development, but also erode public trust in governmental institutions. As we all know, the overall theme of this summit is democracy for future generations, which involves the issue of digital technologies, which will radically transform our societies. In the declaration we endorsed in the last summit, We affirm that digital and emerging technologies has the potential to strengthen democracy and combat corruption. But also, it poses threats related to misuse of this technology. In non-democratic societies, this misuse of emerging technologies can be a potent tool for fragmenting the public sphere, disseminating disinformation and misinformation, and thus compromising the integrity of the democratic processes. On the other side, solid democratic processes with adequate safeguards for the rule of law and fundamental freedoms are essential so as to be resilient in this context of transforming societies. Let me finish by stressing that these are collective challenges. We all face them. It is in that framework that the work of this Summit for Democracy must be read, emphasizing the invaluable contributions of all actors involved: government, civil society, the private sector. I hope we can deliver actions that support implementation of these democratic commitments. We all share them. We all have to endorse them. Thank you very much.
India.
Excellencies, it is my privilege to deliver the national statement on behalf of the Government of India at the third edition of the Summit of Democracy under the theme Democracy for Future Generations. This year's theme is one that resonates not just within the borders of India, but echoes across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, India's ancient civilization, marked by profound philosophical traditions and a deep respect for individual freedoms, laid the groundwork for the democratic ideals that we cherish today. In the hallowed verses of our ancient text, we find echoes of democratic principles that advocated for participatory governance, for protection of individual rights, and the welfare of the entire society. Fast forward to the post-independence era. The framers of India's constitution, inspired by a rich legacy of democratic thought, meticulously crafted a document that would serve as a guiding light of what is today the world's largest democracy. The Indian Constitution, a beacon of pluralism and inclusivity, stands as a testament to the confidence of the founding fathers to create a nation where every citizen, regardless of the background, enjoys equal rights and opportunities. The spirit of debate, discourse, and consensus building that pervaded our historical past continues to breathe life into our democratic institutions. As we navigate the complexity of the modern world, we draw strength from a heritage that recognizes the intrinsic worth and dignity of every individual, mirroring the very essence of democracy. It is this amalgamation of ancient wisdom and contemporary values that positions India as the mother of democracy. Excellencies, in the diverse tapestry of India, we find a compelling narrative of democracy intertwined with both technological progress and a concerted effort to make elections more inclusive, a story that holds promise for future generations. By extending the right to vote to a younger demographic beginning at the age of 18, we acknowledge that the future belongs to our youth and their voices should be integral to any democratic conversation. The introduction of electronic voting machines stands testament to our commitment to transparency, to efficiency, and the sanctity of the democratic process. This shift not only aligns with the principles of a modern democracy, but paves the way for greater civic engagement, especially among the youth who will inherit the responsibilities of our democratic legacy. By reserving seats for women in local bodies, we today have 1.4 million women, or the largest cohort of elected women representatives at the grassroots level in any part of the world. Our recent decision to extend 33% reservation for women in both parliament and state legislatures recognizes the fundamental principle that women's voices are indispensable in shaping the nation's destiny. Excellencies, India's commitment to conducting free, fair, and inclusive elections underscores the resilience and adaptability of its democratic machinery, illustrating that even amidst complexity, the voice of every citizen matters. With 968 million registered voters, 15 million election officials, and 1.2 million polling booths, the upcoming 18th edition of India's national elections is the largest electoral logistics exercise that this planet has ever witnessed. While indeed this is a celebration of democracy, the mammoth exercise involves navigating through urban sprawls, remote villages, and challenging geographical terrains, incorporating measures to enable our senior citizens and differently abled persons to participate fully in the electoral process with the singular goal of leaving no one behind. Excellencies, we in India have witnessed the power of democracy in shaping the destiny of 1 billion plus people. Whether it is landing on the moon's south pole or ensuring financial inclusion by opening 519 million bank accounts, whether it is aiding the world with COVID-19 vaccines or assisting other countries with their capacity building requirements, the Indian experience serves as a testament to the transformative power of democracy, illustrating how it can empower communities, dismantle barriers, help countries emerge stronger, and pave the way for a better tomorrow. India has and continues to share its development experience with the world in the spirit of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, striving together for inclusive development. Let us, as responsible citizens and countries, strive to pass on the torch of democracy, burning brightly to the generations that will inherit the legacy we built today. I thank you for your attention.
Maldives.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to address you today on behalf of President Dr. Mohamed Moise and reaffirm the resolute commitment of the government of Maldives in upholding the fundamental principles of democracy, justice, and equality. I extend my appreciation to the government of Republic of Korea for hosting the summit under the theme Democracy for Future Generations. Excellencies, on the first day as the President of Maldives nearly 4 months ago, President Dr. Moise pledged to uphold democratic values. The President Dr. Moise also pledged to end political interference in the judiciary, and he also ensured it is so from the first day of his government. The Maldives stands firmly dedicated to the advancement of democratic governance, ensuring that every citizen can contribute to our collective aspirations. Despite our efforts to decentralize the governance system, we have not been able to successfully implement a fully decentralized system. President Dr. Moise has therefore established a ministry in charge of local governance. The ministry would work with island councils to streamline efforts to ensure the development and economic growth is realized by all. In addition to our domestic efforts, I am pleased to highlight the collaboration between the Maldives and the United States in implementing reform aimed at ensuring equal access to justice for all citizens. One significant outcome of this collaboration has been the reorganization of our court system, including the introduction of circuit and district courts. President Dr. Moise has also pledged to amend the Civil Procedures Act to ensure justice, efficient, timely, and cost-effective resolution in civil judicial matters. Excellencies, in our collective endeavor to strengthen democracy, it is imperative to underscore the critical importance of nurturing an independent civil society that operates freely from undue influence. We have enacted legislation to protect the fundamental rights of freedom of expression and assembly, and government will ensure that civil society organizations can operate without fear of repression. We believe that youth empowerment is key to achieving the desired vision of democracy in the Maldives. At present, a large percentage of leadership positions within the government of Maldives are held by youth, which has brought about significant positive changes within the decision-making process of the government. It is also heartening to see the noteworthy number of young individuals contesting in the parliamentary elections of the Maldives scheduled to be held next month. We believe that these statistical shifts mark the start of major positive transformation in a journey towards stabilizing our democracy. This government has prioritized the inclusion of women in high-level decision-making roles, and notable progress has been made by advancing the representation of women within the state-owned enterprises. Presently, women hold positions of managing directors in 6 companies, while constituting 32% of board memberships across the state-owned entities. To further elevate women's engagement in politics, a comprehensive program has been initiated. The program offers essential information, technical training, and support across diverse fields, nurturing the emergence of competent female leaders in politics. Additionally, the Gender Equality Action Plan's steering committee has been reconstituted, actively collaborating with stakeholders to implement the action plan effectively. Excellencies, let us press forward with unwavering determination, fueled by our collective commitment to democracy, justice, and equality. Together, we can surmount challenges, spark positive change, and cultivate a world where principles of democracy guide us towards a brighter future. I thank you.
Romania.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the Republic of Korea for hosting this year the 3rd Summit for Democracy. I congratulate you for the chosen central topic of the event, Democracy for Future Generation. If there is a relevant time to reflect on democracy for future generation, it is right now. On the global level, the rules-based international order is being challenged over and over again. Around the world, instability and insecurity have reached alarming levels. This year, more voters than ever in history are heading to the polls, in countries representing about half of the people in the world. For them, democracy will be a dynamic and tangible exercise. It is my hope that young people will choose to live this experience, and it is up to us as leaders to motivate them doing so. Distinguished audience, since our last summit, we have continued our efforts in promoting democracy at all levels, while addressing, like so many other countries, multiple crises. The outbreak of Russia's war against Ukraine required for neighboring countries and for Europe to provide a safe space for persons displaced because of this illegal war. Over 7 million Ukrainian citizens crossed Romania's borders since the end of February 22, of which over 2.5 million benefited from direct support from the government of Romania or from the support of our partners. Prevention and combating trafficking in human beings continue to be a priority for my country. At this stage, we are updating and setting new priorities, including in close cooperation with the civil society. Equally, we are focusing on children's rights, notably on helping children living in poverty and social exclusion, as well as on promoting equal opportunities for all. Distinguished audience, democracy is much more than voting. It is also about civic engagement and participation in the democratic processes. This summit is an opportunity to put a spotlight on the importance of education for democracy. We need to remain committed to raise awareness about young people's fundamental rights and freedom. It is the right way to grant them the most important, which is the ownership of their future. Thank you.